And welcome into the Thursday edition of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Hope everybody's doing well today. Teresa Walker from the Associated Press will drop by at 8 o'clock. Nicole Auerbach at 9 o'clock as well. Got a lot to come today here on the show. Taking your thoughts all show long on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. On our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe Rexrode, how we doing?
Did you do that on purpose, Porth?
Little headphone issue?
So my mic wasn't working. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't talk. And then he's like, hold on. And then it was like full blast. Was that like a – like?
I do not control the volume in your headset.
No.
Right, but I mean, I think it was just there. I'm talking about like having it off and on to give me like a little jolt.
Maybe
Sure.
so.
Okay.
Sure.
Sure. He's not denying it.
Some early coffee there for Joe Rexrode.
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
I've got actual coffee too.
Yes, you do. You're
Just
in
in
good shape.
case.
How are we doing today?
Great.
It's good.
Why do we have to have full daylight at 5 a.m. in this state?
It feels like, I don't know about you, and this could be just me being an idiot, but it feels like every day it's a little bit different. Like today it felt like it was light immediately. I usually walk outside at 5 o'clock every day. Sometimes it's still dark. Sometimes it's bright. Today it was bright. I don't understand.
Well, some of that's probably just cloud cover, right?
Probably.
Yeah, I feel like it's just been getting progressively lighter. I love Central Time, so I'm not complaining, but like I would love this for the kids. I would love this light to be later in the day.
You're not complaining, but you're complaining.
Right. I'm not complaining about Central Time. I like Central Time. I am complaining about full light at 5 a.m. I'm sorry.
No, I'm with you there. It's too early.
It just doesn't, I mean.
Well, most people, they're still asleep at 5 o'clock. Just be dark. Wasting daylight at that point.
Can you just be dark?
Yeah, come on.
Dude. Yeah.
We'll see if we can get that figured out.
Yeah,
we come up
probably.
with a solution to that.
I mean, there's some states. Well, this state does, because like Indiana had the part of the state's daylight savings. Part of the state does it. Now this state doesn't do that. They just have part Eastern, part Central. But like, there are some states that do the parts of it, do the daylight savings, and some don't. And
driving around in Arizona a few weeks ago, that was strange. Like, our phone couldn't figure out what time we were in. Sometimes it was Pacific. Sometimes it was Mountain. Sometimes the phone kept going back and forth. Depending on like how many steps you would take one direction. It was unbelievable. I've never experienced anything like it.
That's interesting. My phone, and maybe it's just because I have an old one, but like when I went to Knoxville for baseball the other day, and it only switches if I turn it off and then turn it back on, which actually I kind of don't like.
No.
You'd
have to remember to turn it off and turn it back on to switch it.
Yeah. So both, then coming back here too, I turn it off now. That's probably just a phone thing for me.
Maybe so. We got a lot of time issues.
Mine switches.
Does it? This is do you guys have the button on the phone?
No.
See, I'm holding on tight to the button. Everybody makes fun of me.
That's not been there in a long time. How long you had that phone?
A while. Every once in a while, like
what iPhone is it?
Is it? Would it be like a 6 or something?
Probably 6.
Or 8.
Yeah. That's still, even if it's an 8, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Anyone? Let us know on the stream.
Anyone who's watching on the stream, what kind of phone do I have? It's a phone that I get made fun of for in my home. So
there you go.
But I like the button. I don't know if I can go without the button. But I also thought I couldn't go without the BlackBerry and the little keyboard. So we all evolve.
Joe Rexrode has evolved over time with his technology. Well, we got a lot to get to today here on the show after we solved the time problem that we've done so far. Lots to get to with the Titans. John Robinson on with Darren Donick and Chase yesterday. And obviously, he kind of did his media tour yesterday on Good Morning Football as well, discussing the acquisition of Julio Jones and just the buzz that's come along with that. The Titans, they're on every national show. They've been on First Take. They were on Undisputed the other day as well. There's a lot of talk right now, both locally and nationally, about the Tennessee Titans. What does that all mean? Is that a surprise to John Robinson at this point? He discussed that yesterday with the guys on Darren, Donick, and Chase. Here's what Titans general manager John Robinson had to say.
I mean, I think there's kind of been some behind-the-scenes buzz. You know, we had been mentioned, in the previous weeks of being a potential landing spot, and we had some conversations with Atlanta leading up to Sunday before we consummated the trade. But I think there was a little bit of an excitement level, buzzing about adding into the team, and I'm excited about the guys that we got coming back that were on last year's teams and the players last year's team and the players we added in free agency in the draft this year too. I mean, all those guys. It's going to take everybody on the team to help us win. But it's good. It's great for the city of Nashville. It's great for the Titans. It's great for Miss Amy Adams Strunk and her family and what her commitment to winning and all she's done for us here.
So that was John Robinson yesterday on Darren, Donick, and Chase. And, Joe, we hear it all the time from Titans fans who say, the Titans don't get discussed enough nationally. There's not enough love for this team. There's not enough attention paid to the Titans outside of Derrick Henry. There's a lot of attention right now for this Tennessee Titans team. What does this ultimately mean in the long run? You heard John Robinson there talk about it being good for the Titans. What do you think this ultimately means in the long run of the amount of attention the Titans are getting right now?
Well, I mean, I don't mean to diminish us, but ultimately they got to win, and that's going to be the biggest thing. But the Titans players have talked about this too.
Yep.
I mean, it bothers them or they notice when they get kind of overlooked. I mean, I think it's good for fans. I mean, I think it's good for the fans. Fans who are really into a particular team, they do care about, if First Take is talking about their team or Pardon the Interruption. There's so many argument shows now that are on. I mean, Pardon the Interruption is sort of like the
OG.
Nice older fellas just discussing things. But, the two-person conversation shows or three-person, a lot of sports content is that, and a lot of that content has had zero Titans, regardless of what they're doing. So I've definitely heard that a lot from fans. I also think, if you want to talk about fan experience, and again, the timing didn't work out here, but fan experience, you're going to get more primetime games, which fans love, of course. I mean, maybe everybody doesn't love being at Nissan Stadium on a Monday night when you have to work the next day, but for the most part, even just the 3 o'clock kick or 3:25 kick on a Sunday versus a noon or whatever. I mean, that stuff matters more to fans. It does matter, though. The guys notice in a locker room, too. Ultimately, doesn't help you win. Like Mike Vrabel, this discussion, I mean, he's spitting on it and walking away. Who gives a crap? And really, I mean, you can tell from the John Robinson comment there. Great, but, okay, it's about winning. He's trying to win. For us, look, so, just take, I've already started to look at the fall, and I'm sure other people who kind of have different choices, like Gentry from the Tennessean or whatever. And there's some weekends where it's like, well, gosh, the Vols are here. I mean, for the most part, you're going to make the Titans game. But now it's like, since this happened, in my mind, you're not missing a second. Yeah, not missing a second of these guys. I mean, there's no choice anymore. Even if it's I think this year, I'm going to miss the Tennessee-Florida game for the first time since I've been here because I forget. I think that might be Seattle or something. But it's no way. Forget about it. You are they're going to get more. They're going to get covered more. They're going to be talked about more, written about more. My summer's changed. I'm how many Julio stories can be done? This summer. Yeah, a lot of different ideas. I mean, so
how many have you come up with so far?
I got a lot.
There you go.
Yeah, a week series that I got in my mind. But and this is one of them. This is one of the angles to me is just the view of the Titans. Again, does it matter more than what they do in the field? Of course not. But this is still an experience, too, for fans. It's entertainment, and this is going to certainly, to me, ramp up everything around this team. Now, hey, sometimes that hurts teams. But I don't think it's a concern or anything like that.
Well, I remember, I think it was it the Philly game a few years ago where they win that game and Taylor Lewan is, yelling in the locker room about how they don't get enough respect.
Yes.
And then we know what happened.
And Byard.
Yeah. And
but Lewan especially, right, and then they lose 3 straight right away.
And okay.
You know, I think the next week, I think they were at Buffalo.
At Buffalo.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was just a disgusting game.
Like peed down their leg in that game.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was an affront to football that day. Oh, it was so bad.
bad.
Great wings, though, that night.
Yeah.
Was that when, what was his name? Nick Williams?
Yes.
Dropped the touchdown?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Mariota actually threw what should have been the winning, but I'm sure he put a bad spin on it, according to Robby.
He was god-awful for 3 quarters, but yes, we forget that part. He was terrible for 3 quarters. Then he threw one pass that was really good, yes.
So was Josh Allen, by the way.
It was
I mean,
bad.
that's where, that's obviously the first time I ever saw him live, and I'm like, oh, God, this guy's awful. What have you done, Buffalo?
There was a run of 6 or 7 years where the Titans and Bills played each other like 2 out of every 3 years, and those games just wanted to rip your eyeballs out. And now it's like the most anticipated game outside of the Chiefs games this year.
So Matt Barkley starts. We got a mute from Rexrode immediately.
God, dang it. It's the stupid daylight savings. All of a sudden it's fun. Both of those teams. So, but yes, that's exactly right. That was Vrabel's first year. Yes. So
then you had the Cairo Santos game.
Oh yeah.
Where he missed like 8 field goals.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, 4, and the 4th was Vrabel setting him out for like a 52-yarder or something like that.
And there was another one under Wisenhunt. I don't think you would have been. You may not have been here for this one.
I had no Wisenhunt time, sadly.
It was like a 10-6 game.
Yeah.
And Tyrod Taylor on like 3rd and 20 backed up on their own 5 or 10 yard line, scrambled for a first down. Like man, that game.
Boyd's still upset.
That game wasted 3.5 hours of my life watching that one.
Yeah, so some ugliness that's long gone now. But that was certainly. I actually remember like the questions for Vrabel. Even I think the next week going into Buffalo game, like some of your players have said you guys don't get, and he was just like, who cares? And he's right. You take your eye off the ball at all and you lose. Is that why they lost those 3 straight games? Because they're worried about that? I mean,
probably not.
But I mean, it is interesting that it was certainly a glimpse that like players care about that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and right now, Titans. Hey, there's no trophy given out at this time of year, but they're kind of winning right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the off season is you got 16, 17 days a year that you get to evaluate a team. Everything else is just you make news, I guess.
I mean, we talked about it yesterday. I mean, they're getting more buzz right now than they've gotten since they were in the AFC title game. And that's just because they're playing Kansas City. But, I mean, they're getting more buzz now than then, I think.
I would say so. Probably since the 99-2000 seasons.
Yeah.
The Athletic has I'll put it to myself again here. The Athletic has a podcast called The Lead. That's like our lead podcast.
Yeah.
I've been on it once ever. And it was when they made the AFC Championship game. So I'm on it again today. So there you go. I mean, it's kind of an indication. People are like, oh, Titans exist in the league. Oh, yeah. How about that?
Did you know Joe writes for The Athletic?
There you go.
Yeah, we hadn't brought that one out in a while. Way to go, Porth.
Thank you.
There's been less self-promotion of Rexrode as of late.
I haven't written anything this week. I'm slacking. I got a Julio.
Apparently that's about to change.
I have a Julio X's and O's story coming, though, in which I basically do very little work because we have a guy who actually knows X's and O's. It's pretty awesome, but I'll take half the credit.
Looking forward to that. Coming up, we're off and running today on Robby and Rexrode, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Now, most fans very excited about the Julio Jones trade. Some fans are not. And I think we may know the reason why. We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Joe, we were discussing the attention the Titans are getting right now in the last segment. So much so that it kind of seems like you've had a breakthrough moment in your family with the Titans. We've been discussing your 13-year-old for a long time and his undying love of the mighty team that will not yield, the Detroit Lions. And I feel like we could have had a breakthrough yesterday.
A mighty team that will not yield. There we go. Yeah, I don't know if it was a breakthrough, but listen, here's another example. A teenager who loves sports. All he's been talking about is Julio Jones since it happened.
Yep.
But yes, yesterday, and I tweeted it, in case anyone hasn't seen it on Twitter, at Joe Rexrode on Twitter. This is total. Let's just self-promote all day.
It really is.
But he said, hey, when am I getting my Julio jersey? You know, first of all, it's like, hey, spoiled kid.
Yes.
How about, do some chores? But now, I don't know about breakthrough because, look, he has become a Titans fan. But I've told him, you live in Nashville, you should abandon the Lions.
Completely.
And you should embrace fully the Titans. But, I bet you this helps. Now, he does have a Derrick Henry jersey. He's gone to – I've taken him and his siblings to, camp before on fan days when I covered it, and they were, went around and got autographs and stuff like that. So, he's a fan. But, yeah, this is like now he's thinking about the Titans in June, Probably.
That's a breakthrough.
And I'm not hearing any Lions talk. So that's a good thing. I threw out there the idea of – just covering up one of those twos on the Henry jersey.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Save a few bucks, but I don't know that that's going to fly. So if he does his chores, he'll get that at some point, probably. And he's constantly like, what does it mean? Who's going to stop him? It's the same thing that we're all talking about. Like, wow, how good is this? How many teams have had three guys like that? And then unfortunately, I said, well, I will tell you, when the Lions had Herman Moore and Barry Sanders and Brett Perriman, and I was like, don't even bring up the Lions. I was about to say,
that's on you. What are you doing?
Yeah, I know. That's when I still cared.
He was walking away, and you brought him back in.
Well, but I also pointed out, quarter century ago. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Well, that's good news. I saw your tweet yesterday, and I thought to myself, this could be it. It was Julio Jones that finally gets it done for young Brennan to come in and take the full plunge to Tennessee Titans fandom.
We'll see. It certainly has caught his attention. So there's another little anecdotal evidence of what this has done so far.
So Brennan, one of many people who love the Julio Jones trade to the Titans. We've discussed it all week. Who's going to stop this offense? But not everybody loves it. There are people who are concerned based on John Robinson's recent track record with acquisitions that maybe this is not going to work out very well for the Titans. And, of course, one of many moves you can point to is the Jadeveon Clowney move from last season. You bring in Clowney. He waits until the last second, really, of training camp to come in and start to get ready for this Titans team. And as we know, he gets injured early on in the season. It does not work out. 0 sacks, and he's on his merry way now to the Cleveland Browns. You add in the Vic Beasley signing as well, which we've talked a lot about here, what a disaster that signing was. A lot of Titans fans saying, I don't really trust John Robinson and his evaluation right now. Heck, Charles Robinson said last week when he started talking about Julio Jones to the Titans, I have to see if this works out with John Robinson because there have been some moves made as of late that have not gone well for the Titans. How valid do you think that reasoning is if you're not excited about the Julio Jones trade because of some recent moves the Titans have made? And do you think there's any validity to that whatsoever?
Well, I think there's validity to questioning in general.
Sure.
That's fair. I'll say for 1,018th time that the bigger issue last summer or last offseason was no one wants this guy. There's a lot of concerns about whether he wants to play football, but let's give him $9.5 million. Everyone wants this guy. Well, look, they all look misguided now, I guess. You won the sweepstakes. You won the recruiting battle. There's a lot more. I think there's a lot more certainty about what you would have with a healthy player than the other guy. But we talk about Clowney.
Sure.
It's a $4 million difference, or $3 million difference, or $3.5 million difference in what they made last year. They both drained you and gave you nothing. How does that apply to this? Sure, it's an obvious thing. I mean, it's a thing that John Robinson got asked, I think, by Glennon on Sunday. After last year, do you have any hesitation? And he said, what Titans fans should want to hear, which is like, you still have to be ready to take your shots when you have a look at it. So, look, if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, if the team is still not good, like because of their defense, if Julio isn't good, all of a sudden he's fallen off as a player, Julio's not healthy or whatever it is, then they will be tied together. There's no doubt about that. It'll be, let's list them out. Let's list all the offseason moves that keep not working for John Robinson. So that's part of the risk here too for him. But I don't look at that and say, ooh, maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. You still have to look at his whole track record. He's got some big whiffs, got some big hits. Overall, more good than bad. And there's information on Julio that we all have. Now, do they have more? Those coaches have been spending weeks on looking at film. Those guys have spent phone calls calling Nick Saban, around his signing of a big extension to be paid $18 million a year until he's 114 years old. And he still had time to talk to them for a few minutes about Julio. I mean, they've done their homework more than they have more information than anybody else does. And so there's no certainty, but I don't look at last offseason. Again, if that's the thing, then fire him. Like, if last offseason means that he can't make a good decision here, you shouldn't be excited about something like this, then I guess you're just out totally on him as a GM.
Well, I agree. And this is what I tried to kind of convey this week. The Clowney thing and the Julio Jones thing, to me, are totally different. I mean, number one, obviously free agency and trade, it's different that way. But even when we were discussing bringing in Jadeveon Clowney, there was a debate about, is he going to be worth it? Like, his production, is it worth it? I mean, Clowney has always kind of felt like, to me, man, that guy, he's just a physical freak. He's incredibly talented. He's athletic. The production, to me, has never really matched up to what we thought it would be when he came into the league. That's not the same thing with Julio Jones. Julio Jones, like, the one question I have with Julio Jones is, can he stay healthy? That's the question I have. And you have that question to some degree with everybody in this league. The production, it's not even really comparable to me between Julio Jones and Jadeveon Clowney.
Right. And it's funny, too, when we get people doing the Davis-Julio comparison. So who's been more durable in their career? It's not even close. Yeah. Now it's a shorter period, and Davis is coming off a healthy year. Julio's coming off it. So the most recent history is the other way around. But, I mean, Davis has had major injury concerns. I mean, it's hard in this league not to at a certain point. I would say Julio has been incredibly durable given his usage and the amount of hits he's taken over the years. But sure, at some point it's gonna fall apart. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. Clowney you were hoping he could be like 2017 Clowney when Vrabel was his D coordinator. Yep. He had like 9.5 sacks. Overall the combination of TFLs and everything was great. That's what you wanted. So that was 1 year with production that was like Pro Bowl-ish for an all-around player. Julio Jones is like Hall of Fame level year after year after year. So it's also, though, I mean, and I guess you could knock it this way a little bit more than last year. This is still somewhat of a luxury addition, whereas Clowney was an absolute glaring, especially for those of us who looked at Beasley and said, you got to do something else. Like, It looked like an absolute void you had to fill. This still would have been, I think, a good offense without Julio Jones.
Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says, I don't love the idea of abandoning your hometown team for the place that you live. I'm a Titans fan from Nashville who lives in Michigan, and I will not be leaving the Titans for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, because of the freaking Detroit Lions. Are you kidding me? A mighty team that will not yield. It's case by case.
It is.
If the Lions are involved and it's a choice,
go the other way.
Choose the other team. The Browns, choose them. The Cardinals, choose them. Who else you got? The Jags, all day.
The Jets.
Jets. Jets. All day.
Jets.
I mean, come on. No, look, I agree. Like, I'm in general, for the rest of my life, Detroit Tigers, make a run at some point 20 years from now. If I'm alive, I'll be happy about it, okay? But you abandon the Detroit Lions if they are your hometown team. Because they have abandoned you your entire lifetime.
That's a good point. They really have. When we come back, we've discussed this week the biggest pressure facing the Titans. Who's under the most pressure? Who benefits the most from Julio Jones coming in? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Corey texting in, St. Louis native now living here in Nashville, abandoning the Rams after their move back to L.A. and embracing the Titans was one of the easiest decisions I've ever made. Tighten up. So, Corey, embracing your philosophy. I like it, Corey. Well done.
Yeah, that's a totally different type of abandonment.
That's a tough one.
That is tough. It's always interesting to me. There's still people, sometimes they'll chime in on the show here or write in or whatever, who live in Houston who love the Titans. And they sort of, they loved McNair and Eddie George and Bruce Matthews and some of those guys that were there, and they kind of hung with them. And I feel like it's not a huge group, but there's some people who do. But I can't blame anyone who's like, man, if you're going to do that, especially with an ownership who did what those guys did,
yeah,
I'd have a hard time giving them $1 more or, flipping to watch them on TV ever again.
Ron on the text line says, I believe Julio is a team player, and being this late in his career, I'm sure he wants a chance to make a run or two in the playoffs for a championship. This is Derrick Henry's team, and I'm sure Julio knows that and will fall right in and do whatever it takes to get there. There's no guarantee, but the last thing he's going to be is a cancer in the locker room. Regardless of what happens this year with Julio, I think he's going to elevate and inspire this team and make everyone play better, even if he only plays half a year due to injury. Just being around him, watching him on the field, it's going to make the team better. If the defense can just be average, I believe we can be better than last year and be number 2 behind Kansas City.
This sounds Tom Brady-ish, just his inspiration. Even if Julio's just staying on the sidelines, like, Nick Westbrook-Akina, you will get open.
The ball.
Yeah. Shane Bowen, this is when you call the blitz, Shane. The Brady effect.
But to Ron's
maybe
point,
Julio's becoming a little mythical here.
Well, I will agree with Ron from this perspective. I do think my concern level of him coming in being a problem pretty low. I think he's going to be fine. And to Ron's point, I do still think. This is largely Derrick Henry's team. We know what the window is. You talked about it yesterday. The window largely is, can you win now with Derrick Henry still in his prime years? We've talked this week about who faces the most pressure, and there's a lot of different ways you can go with that. Tannehill, obviously being the quarterback, you're always under pressure. Todd Downing, the pressure was high to begin with. It just got even higher with Julio Jones coming in. Who do we think benefits the most from Julio Jones coming in? You've got A.J. Brown on the other side. He is ascending in this league, and we're going to get a little bit more deep into A.J. Brown and what we think he can be coming up in the next segment as well. Derrick Henry there as well, maybe not having to face as many stacked boxes. Ryan Tannehill, another weapon on the outside. Who do we think benefits the most from Julio Jones coming in and the presence he brings that other defenses have to account for?
I think there's a long list, and I do think beyond the inspiration that touches everyone, like Shane Bowen, there's a little less pressure to me just in terms of you probably feel like, okay, we don't need to hold the Cardinals to 24 in the opener, right. So but that's not the top list. To me, I do tend to look at guys like Ferkser and Reynolds and think, when are they ever going to have a problem, right? Now, are they going to get the ball? That's another question. But Tannehill, certainly, I think in the year and a half plus that we've seen him play, he's not a guy who forces it anywhere. How many times has he really just been like, you know what, A.J. Brown's my best receiver. I'm pumping it in there. Okay, Humphrey's right here. I'll take that.
Yep.
Corey Davis, one-on-one over here. Yeah, that's easy. So I feel like Tannehill has been a nice distributor of the football who reads the field and takes what's open, and those guys are going to be open. Reynolds and Ferkser are going to be open. They have to be. You as a defense, what defensive coordinator is what defensive coordinator is going to even think about them ever? They're just little, they're little X's on the board. They could be anyone.
Yeah.
They don't matter. How do we deal with this guy, and this guy? And they'll do different things among those three, right? But everybody else, they don't give a crap about them, and they're pretty good. We'll see with Josh Reynolds. I liked the signing. I think he's a pretty good player. And we know what Ferkser is certainly a guy who has already been the beneficiary of what's around him, and now it's better. So I look at those guys probably first, even though, again, when you talk about benefit and production and how it benefits your career, that's different because they there may be some weeks where it's like, nah, sorry, I'm just going to keep throwing to number 2 and number 11. And by the way, it's a 6 in the box. Here you go, Derek. I mean, there's going to be some weeks where they probably don't get that much action.
Well, Will Compton tweeted yesterday, the biggest winner in the Julio trade, that undrafted Harvard tight end scrapper, Anthony Ferkser, who's been making sneaky athletic plays since he's been with the boys. He will feast this year with the attention on the big 3. So Will Compton, big fan of Anthony Ferkser, thinks he's going to have a big year this year.
Yeah, I mean, Ferkser was already in line for a bigger role. How big? I mean, right now, he's tight end 1.
Yeah.
Which is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think also I would also just talk about Derrick Henry on this topic though too, because it's a question of, do you benefit in terms of within a game, play by play, what kind of resistance you're facing, or do you benefit in the bottom line? I think Derrick Henry's numbers are going down. I don't buy the idea, 2,000 again. I don't see that. I see fewer carries, but I see just way less. You know what? We're going to ram it in there anyway because he's Derrick Henry, and more ability to have balance.
See fewer carries, same Derrick Henry.
Right. And again, the key there, to me, the impetus for that is that after this 17-game season, that you have Derrick Henry ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not saying that he was worn down going into it last year, but boy, he
got a lot of carries.
He did have a lot of work last year.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says Todd Downing benefits the most. Jones makes an average quarterback play look better and makes offensive play calling much easier. I would agree with that to some degree. I mean, obviously, if you're an offensive coordinator, you'd love to have Julio Jones. But as we talked about, I think that also there's a lot of pressure on Todd Downing now. I mean, if this offense isn't an elite offense, people are going to look around and be like, dude, you've got 3 Pro Bowl level guys that you're dealing with on your skill positions, and you can't make this offense elite. What's wrong with you? So there's that part of it too.
Right. It's really how you want to look at it, because we've had the question of who has the most pressure.
Yeah.
But I think that answer could be the same. It could be him. Both things. Most pressure, but also most benefit.
Yeah.
If I'm him, I'll take the pressure in Julio over, still a lot of pressure. And no Julio.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any question about that.
Makes it harder to screw it up if you're Todd Downing.
You would think.
You would think. Also makes it less acceptable.
Yes.
To screw it up.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, had the Titans not done this and taken a huge step back offensively, it still would have been more about him than, I guess, maybe Jonnu Smith goes to New England and is a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro this year or something. But it still was going to be, okay, what's the difference? Well, Arthur Smith was really good, and it's got to be Todd Downing. But, yes, now it's like, look what you have, dude.
Well, to me, my answer for this, it comes back to number 11. I mean, I think A.J. Brown massively benefits from this. And it was interesting. I was thinking about it, before they make this trade. We talked about just the concern level of having Josh Reynolds as your number 2. I mean, he could have been fine. We don't know exactly what he would have been as a number 2 wide receiver. But I know this. If Josh Reynolds is your number 2, A.J. Brown's probably getting double-teamed a lot. And it's going to be difficult to double-team A.J. Brown now. I mean, unless you just want to have Derrick Henry scamper all over you at this point if you're a defensive coordinator. I think if A.J. Brown can stay healthy this year, I mean, it's a natural part of his ascent anyway. I think he's getting better, and we saw him get better last year, even with injuries that he was dealing with and that he played through. I think A.J. Brown could have a massive year this year. My conversation of who benefits the most starts with him. I think this is a huge deal for A.J. Brown.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, he's a strong contender for the number 1 spot. It's just such a different outlook for him on what he's going to see. Well, and look, maybe, I mean, some weeks it probably is going to be like, you know what, cornerback 1's on him.
Yep.
Because look, Julio Jones. What if he's 80% of Julio Jones? A.J. Brown keeps growing. I mean, we may be seeing these guys, cross each other in terms of, trajectory, which makes sense based on their ages. So maybe A.J. Brown still sees more attention, but A.J. Brown's going to be just fine if that means the other guys go wild, and this guy wasn't available to go wild before.
When we come back, we'll continue the discussion on A.J. Brown and dive a little bit deeper into his trajectory. What do we think A.J. Brown's ceiling could be as a receiver in this league? How much do we think Julio Jones can help him get there? We'll talk about that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. The Nashville Predators and 102.5 The Game jointly host a 615-day celebration presented by Social Furniture at Fordyce Center, Bellevue, benefiting Boys and Girls Clubs of Middle Tennessee, coming up this Tuesday. During the 12-hour window from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 102.5 The Game will broadcast live from Fordyce Center in Bellevue. Fans will have multiple opportunities to take the ice during donation-based public skate sessions. Draft Picks Restaurant and Bar will also be open all day long. Outside from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., the Fordyce Center Bellevue parking lot will be overflowing with food and beverage options, including Hunt Brothers, Coke and Dr. Pepper, as well as face painting, a photo booth, music from DJ Kev, and other Nashville Predators partner activations to further benefit Boys and Girls Clubs of Middle Tennessee. The Nashville Predators Foundation, empowered by Smile Direct Club, is running a silent auction, which is live until 6:15 on June 15th. Text Preds to 76278 to bid on exciting sports merchandise and signed Predators apparel. 100% of the proceeds will go directly to the charity. For more details, visit the GameNashville.com/615day. Looking forward to that event coming up on Tuesday at Fordyce Center in Bellevue. We will, of course, be there as well, starting at 6 a.m. So hope to see as many of you out there as possible. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Discussing the Titans and A.J. Brown. What's his ceiling in the NFL as a wide receiver? Now, Joe, we had a discussion similar to this last year as the season was going on, trying to identify exactly where A.J. Brown fits into, the pecking order of wide receivers in the NFL. And as we found out as the year went along, he was dealing with a knee injury. I think it became pretty obvious at the end of last year. It kind of felt like one time a game he'd get hit in his ankle, and it was a struggle to get back up as well. So A.J. Brown was playing through some stuff last year, and still 70 catches, over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, and at times was just an absolute monster. Like, no one's ever going to forget the touchdown he scored in Baltimore where he drug the entire Ravens defense into the end zone with him. Julio Jones coming in, I think A.J. Brown benefits more than anybody with Julio Jones coming in. What do you say to that, and what do you think his trajectory looks like right now in terms of where he slots in among NFL wide receivers and what his ceiling could be?
So I'll actually bring this back to Brennan, Mr. Buy Me a Julio Jones jersey, who's going through, football workouts all summer. And in a conversation, he's obsessed with, he's trying to increase his speed and it's all about, who runs a 4.4, who runs a 4.5. And the point I made is, there's a lot of guys who run 4.5. I mean, when you're talking about top athletes out there, okay, there are plenty of great athletes who run a 4.5, 4.4, and they don't sniff getting to the NFL as a receiver. There's a lot more to it than that. And obviously these two guys are specimens and they work on every aspect of it, but it's the nuances of the position. That's where Julio has been great, and I think that's where AJ we've seen him grow since he's been here. And certainly that's coaching and all that stuff, but I think it's also his own personal individual work on it. Talked about what was the word that I forgot yesterday that we use all the time? Yeah, football junkie.
Yes.
Football junkie. So that's why I would answer that. I think his ceiling is very high. Is that to say that he's going to be at some point, one of the top 2 or 3 receivers in the league? I don't know about that, but I think he's got a long career, if he can stay healthy, of being a top number 1 receiver in the league. He's definitely a number 1 receiver.
Well, I was impressed by the strides he took last year from this standpoint. I mean, we talked about heading into the year. He's great after the catch. We knew that from the moment he caught the ball. I mean, the first time he was here. He's incredibly difficult to bring down. He's basically a running back when you get the ball in his hands down the field. But could he be more of a deep threat? Like, could he get down the field, win the jump ball, take it to the house, be a vertical threat? I thought he was much better in that area last year. And, he's 23 years old. I mean, I think that's going to continue to get better as he moves along here. But I look at him right now, and the point that you brought up that's kind of stuck with me, I mean, you were talking about this in training camp last year, how A.J. Brown reminds you of Kevin Byard from the standpoint of they're always in the film room, they're always on the field trying to get better, they're obsessed with football, and that's a great quality to have. Like, I think sometimes we think about that, and, well, of course they are. They're in the NFL, that's their job to be obsessed with football. I think everybody in the NFL, to some degree, for the most part, loves football and loves putting in the work, but there are guys that take that to a different level. Like, I don't think there's any question about it. You think about Peyton Manning, he took it to a different level at quarterback. Obviously, he was physically gifted, and we know all that, but part of what made Peyton Manning great was his preparation and the work that he was able to put in. I'm not comparing A.J. Brown to Peyton Manning, but what you threw out there last year, I listened to, I paid attention to, and I think it's absolutely been the case. He always is trying to get better, and to me, that's a great sign for him moving forward. I think he absolutely can be a top 5 wide receiver in this league. I really do.
It's not. Yeah, it's not everybody. It's not. And there's a certain amount that's built in, but that isn't everyone. So again, I'll take it to the discussion with a kid. So it's like, hey, look, lifting weights, running, all that stuff, absolutely important. You have to be as physically capable as possible. But if you want to play like at linebacker, well, why don't you figure out what everybody on the defense is supposed to be doing, not just your job. The person next to you, the person on the other side of you. Spend extra time with it. Figure it out. Coaches notice that stuff. I mean, that's on a much smaller level, but some people are just – they just do that stuff. And I think some people are better at it than others too, right? I mean, some people just – like Kevin Byard, is a guy who absolutely understands what everyone on the defense is supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Is every safety in the league like that? I bet you if they had some sort of an aptitude test on defensive football schematics, then that Kevin Byard would score real high relative to his position in the league. That'd just be my guess. So, some people, it is. I guess obsession is a good word for it. But if that's absolutely what A.J. Brown is, and I think it's what Julio Jones has been too. It's not just that he's incredibly fast, strong, and all these things. There are, again, Jerry Rice is the greatest receiver, and some would say the greatest football player ever, 4'6". So he was a technician who was just absolutely relentless at getting open, and you couldn't stop him. And it's because of those little things that go into it. And
in trying to identify what A.J. Brown's ceiling is, I think our Robby and Rexrode correspondent Michael really nails it the best. Here's what our correspondent Michael had to say about what A.J. Brown's ceiling could be.
The ceiling is the roof.
The ceiling is the roof. Thank you, Michael. We appreciate that. What do we think about the ceiling being the roof for A.J. Brown?
Who is that?
It's Michael Jordan.
That was Jordan. That's
Yes.
Right. The funny thing is, I never realized that was Jordan. When
really?
Was that?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Of all the times and the opportunity that you take to make fun of Michael Jordan, him saying the ceiling is the roof could be the dumbest thing he's ever said, and you didn't know it was him.
When did he say that?
I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, some Tar Heel event.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. I always thought that quote was stupid, but I didn't realize it was. Wow, one more thing. I had no idea. I mean, normally I just talk about how he's 1-3 all time against Isaiah Thomas.
That really failed with my correspondent joke, Michael. I thought he would get that.
Yeah.
Joe had such a confused look on his face.
We have a correspondent on the show?
And his name is Michael?
His name's Michael. Who is it?
I was trying to think, who would that be? And then I was like, oh, is it someone on Twitch right now? Someone on YouTube make a funny comment?
Maybe so.
The ceiling is the roof.
What the? I want to hear the full context. Do you guys know the full context of this quote?
I think I've seen it before. I don't remember what he's talking about. The ceiling is the roof with A.J. Brown.
Yeah, go make another self-serving documentary.
There it is.
You are such a hater.
You are such a hater, Michael.
It was a good doc. It was a good doc. I appreciate that he admitted how much he hates Isaiah Thomas.
There you go. So how much do we think Julio Jones maybe accelerates the top level what we could see with A.J. Brown? We know that A.J. Brown obviously loves Julio Jones. He's looking forward to playing with Julio Jones, and this is a big deal for him. But on the field, what does Julio Jones mean for A.J. Brown, and do you think it accelerates him getting to whatever A.J. Brown's top level could be?
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's hard for me to predict the bottom line for this. I agree with you. It is going to be huge for him to not you just can't focus yourself on him all the time like you would have in terms of coverage. But are his numbers? I could still make the case that no Julio, they're going to force feed A.J. Brown because they have to. And he's going to have monster numbers, probably a lot of yard after catch numbers. They're going to get him the ball in a lot of different ways. And now you can be more equitable. So does he get the ball less this year? I think that's possible too. But again, if you have more space whenever you are doing your job on the football field, that's better for you. So how many years is Julio Jones going to be playing for the Titans and playing at a high level? If he plays at a high level at all, I would guess probably 2. Yeah. After and during that time, by the way, Titans are going to have to pony up for A.J. Brown. But I would say he could be in store for huge seasons. He could also be great, but with a little bit less usage because of this year. I mean, I think he probably has more big plays in him this year because of this.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about, the usage. I mean, 106 targets last year, 70 catches, 14 games. So you're factoring in 2 games there that he missed, and we don't know what that's going to look like. And then you add in an extra game as well this year. I am interested to see what the target discrepancy looks like between Brown and Julio. I don't think it's going to be a huge discrepancy. I think it's going to be pretty close. But depending on how defenses kind of attack those two, I am interested to see who ends up with more targets, if it's Julio or if it's A.J. Brown. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is.
No idea. I have no idea. I mean, again, I think A.J. Brown, obviously, he's early in what I think is going to be a great career, and Julio Jones is late in what has been a great career. At some point, they probably cross. You know, what you hope if you're the Titans is that right now they have this window where it's
pretty high level,
just overwhelming for people. But, yeah, I have no idea on that. I'd like to see here. There's some more. Do we have some like FanDuel odds on this? I'd like to know what
we can see.
I'd like to know what Vegas says about over under on like targets and catches for these guys.
Travis in Coopertown on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says barring injury and depending on the quarterback play, A.J. Brown's ceiling is a perennial Pro Bowl receiver, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible. Now it's stiff competition, man.
Yeah, there are a lot of good receivers.
There's great receivers coming in this league right now. I mean, Alabama's putting however a year in the league that are ridiculous. You know, I mean, it's a position that it's just emphasized. You've got some guys who could have been great running backs who are opting for receiver because it's a better career path. You've also got some of those guys who like opt for linebacker because it's a better career path, frankly. But it's a passing league, a passing game. The offenses translate from college to pro way more closely now than they did 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And that's the hard part of projecting the whole perennial Pro Bowl is like there's a lot of candidates for that. But I think he can be that. I think he has multiple Pro Bowls in him ahead of him.
Coming up next, we will switch gears and get into a little NHL. A couple of former Predators making some big-time noise in the Stanley Cup playoffs. What does it mean for the Predators as well as they move forward here? We'll get into all that coming up next hour. Right now, though, got to tell you about my friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. And look, the NBA playoffs are here. It's been exciting so far, and you'll be in hoops heaven betting on all the action on FanDuel Sportsbook. There are so many good matchups. FanDuel is taking that excitement to another level. New and existing users can bet risk-free throughout the playoffs. New users can get up to $1,000 back if your first bet doesn't win. Plus, once you have an account, you can bet one same-game parlay risk-free every single week. That means you can combine multiple bets for an even bigger win. The money line, the point spread, player assists, rebounds, points, three-pointers, everything is on the table. And if you don't win, you'll get up to $10 back. Basketball fans, now is the perfect time to give FanDuel a shot. Just sign up with promo code ROB to bet the NBA playoffs risk-free exclusively on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. You must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. Risk-free bet for first online real money wager only, and refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. Same-game parlay refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. A max refund of $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same-game parlay available for multiple sports in all states and on mobile and web. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Welcome back in. Hour number 2 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Going to have Teresa Walker drop by at 8 o'clock from the Associated Press. We'll get her thoughts on Julio Jones to the Titans. What does that mean for the Titans as they head into this new season coming up in a few weeks? Looking forward to Teresa joining us at 8 o'clock. Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic at 9 o'clock to break down the world of college sports right now, including possible expansion to a 12-team college football playoff. We'll get to that coming up at 9 o'clock. And as always, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Now, the NHL playoffs still underway, and 2 former Predators making some pretty heavy noise in the playoffs. The Stanley Cup semifinals are about to get underway. We're still determining what's going to happen between Vegas and Colorado at this point. Game 6 taking place tonight between Vegas and Colorado. But the New York Islanders punched their ticket last night to the Stanley Cup semifinals. Barry Trotz has the team in the conference finals / semifinals for the second consecutive year. As we know, Barry Trotz also won a Stanley Cup with the Washington Capitals and really has changed the culture there with the New York Islanders with how good of a job he's done. Shea Weber and the Montreal Canadiens also in the Stanley Cup semifinals. They've gotten out of the Canadian division. They upset Toronto in the first round and then pull off the sweep of the Winnipeg Jets in the second round as well. So 2 key members of the Predators in their formative years, Barry Trotz and Shea Weber, still getting things done at a pretty high level. Number 1, let's start with Trotz, Joe. What have you made of what Trotz has been able to do in his time with the Islanders, and really since he left here in Nashville? Obviously, winning a Stanley Cup with Washington. Washington really screwed up that contract situation to the point where he left after that year and went to the Islanders. A pretty quick turnaround with the Islanders. Like, you think back, the Islanders, they lose John Tavares by the time Trotz walks through the door, and you thought to yourself, okay, well, this could be a process for Trotz to try to get this thing built back up. And here they are, the second consecutive year, they're in the Final Four in the NHL. It's been pretty remarkable to see what Barry Trotz has been able to do with the Islanders. It really has.
How long did you talk before I came back in the studio in a row? Was it
3 minutes?
3 minutes. It's pretty good.
Nice. Impressive.
Thanks. I could have kept going.
And I totally screwed up, too, and I didn't bring my little stir for the coffee. It's a rough morning. Yeah, the Trotz thing is, I think it's a great example of coaches, just the tendency to over-blame coaches, because that's what was happening in Washington, wasn't it?
Yep.
And I think that's what happened here, but you guys can tell me better. I only know after the fact, and I only know from afar when it happened, but change, I guess, needed. Where's the most likely place for that? It's right there. It's behind
especially
the
in
bench.
this league,
especially in the NHL. This league changes out coaches more than any of the other 3. Football, basketball, baseball, hockey coaches get fired more, and it's a heck of a story. And you're right. I mean, Washington screwed it up. And what he's done with the Islanders, to me, is amazing. Now, is he overcredited for what has happened with the Islanders? I guess you could make that case. You could go, but over the duration of his career, you're giving him a ton of credit. Yeah. I mean, I think I don't disagree with you, but I'm just saying, whenever you talk about coaches being overblamed, sure. I think it goes both ways to some extent. But what a story!
I mean, the combo of Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz there has worked like gold.
Yeah,
with the franchise that, to your point, Robby, they lost John Tavares. Everyone thought they were just going to go down to the tubes, and they've won 5 playoff series in the 3 years.
How many series has John Tavares won since then?
Zip.
0.
Funny how that works, right?
Yeah, it is funny. Grass is not always
So
green.
what's the lesson? What's the lesson you take out of this?
Well, Barry Trotz is a good coach. That's the lesson I take out of this so far. I mean, look, the Islanders, it's funny because, like, at the end of the season, they were struggling. I mean, they were struggling to get in. They made it in. They were the last seed in their division. They get in. And it's just like they can take it to a different level in the playoffs. And look, we know the way Barry Trotz wants to play. I think that's largely why he was so successful in Washington. He's a defensive guy. Like he makes you play a 200-foot game. In Washington, that was their problem. Like they couldn't do that before he got there. They were run and gun. They were offensively. I mean, obviously you got Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, all these different guys. They were great, but they couldn't defend. And then Barry Trotz comes in, and you play that way. You get your star players to play that way, and we know what the result was. They win a Stanley Cup. This team, I mean, I look at the Islanders, and other than Matt Barzal, like they don't have much offensively at all. Like they're not that good offensively, but they keep finding ways to win, and they make it, I mean, just hard as heck to score on. I mean, they're goalies. Like even their goalies, I look at them, I'm like, okay. Their goalies are fine, but they're not great. But they're just so good defensively. And he gets his teams to play a certain way. And when they buy in, I mean, it's pretty easy to see the results now at this point. I think he deserves a lot of credit.
So how much of what they're doing it like looks familiar and traces to what he did for so many years here?
I think a lot does. I mean, the talent level – Barry Trotz had more talented, not all the time, but had more talented teams here than he does right now with this Islanders team.
Like the 07 team.
Like the 07 team. I might put the 12, the 06 team. I mean, there were more talented teams he had here. And look, I think there were moves that he made here that he deserved criticism for. Like I think back to that 2012 series against Phoenix at the time, now Arizona. They're down 0-2. They come back home, and Radulov and Kostitsyn are suspended. They're going out in Scottsdale. They get suspended for a game, and the Predators win Game 3. They look pretty good. So he just trots the same lineup back out there and leaves Radulov out of the lineup, which sounds like, okay, you leave the winning lineup in for Game 4, and then I think they got shut out in Game 4. And you're like, yeah, you might have been able to use Alex Radulov in this series. Like, I mean, he made some moves here. It's not like he was perfect, but I think he's learned a lot from that. I think he's evolved as a coach as the years have gone on. And, you know, I heard people last night talking about how he's knocking on the door of the Hall of Fame. Like, I mean, I think that door has been kicked down. He's like the third or fourth winningest coach in the history of the league. He's got a Stanley Cup. He's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Well, and another thing about Trotz is you could look at what he's doing and what he's doing and what he did here and say, okay, so some coaches are like they're better with like less talented teams maybe and like the defensive side, but I mean he also has done it with the studs.
Talent, yeah.
So I mean it's a pretty complete resume now.
And that was impressive in itself too because they could never get over the hump.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were blaming him at some point. It's like, well, let's move on.
Well,
right?
in his first 2
I'm
years,
not sure about this guy.
Well,
right.
I think wasn't it the first 2 years they got bounced in the second round by Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And then in his third postseason with them, they slay the Dragon of Pittsburgh in the second round, and then they go on and win the Cup.
But at that point, it had already become.
Well, that's what it was,
and that's why he's not there anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
they wouldn't give him a contract extension.
Yeah.
I mean, they were going to fire him if they didn't win the Cup that year, which is it's amazing to think about.
But that's the NHL.
Yeah.
I mean,
But he
totally different situation. But again, like John Hines is not even a year here for a team that's been totally fumbling around without him. And John Hines, got to go. Now I think some of that is John Hines. I mean, his resume is very short right now, right?
Yep.
Coming in here, but still, I mean, I just thought it was crazy to just be looking at the coach. But that's what people do in the NHL.
Trotz wouldn't have been fired because he wasn't under contract.
Well, yeah, he just wouldn't get his contract.
He would have been
renewed.
gone.
Yeah, he'd have been
Right.
gone,
And he still was just gone.
which is incredible.
I mean, he hasn't lost in the first round since he left Nashville.
Yep.
Think about that.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
It's pretty awesome.
It's awesome. I mean, we know this. I mean, Barry Trotz, if you've ever met him, I mean, it couldn't be happening to a better guy. Like he is awesome. He is everything you want in a coach.
And there was a cool moment last night after the Islanders scored the empty net goal where Lane Lambert, who is an assistant here for his last couple of years with the Preds, he and Lane Lambert went nuts on the Islanders bench when the empty netter went in to seal the deal.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible to watch. And then you've got Shea Weber as well with Montreal. And look, Shea Weber started off this year pretty incredible. I mean, he was playing really well, and he's dipped. Like it's become clear he's not the same guy. Like he's still good, but he's not Shea Weber anymore. He's been okay during the playoffs so far, but this is the first time in his career that he's made it this far in the playoffs. This is the first time he's ever been past the second round, which is pretty incredible to think about with as long as he's been around. I wonder who Predators fans are rooting for more in the playoffs. My guess is probably Weber because Trotz has got his cup. But my guess is it's probably Shea Weber. I don't know at the end of the day like how good Montreal is. Like their next task is going to be the winner of Colorado and Vegas. And this is probably going to come to a pretty quick end for them.
Well, what about Trotz?
Well, I know. He got Tampa.
Yeah, if he wins, I put him in the Hall of Fame immediately if he goes another round.
I know.
Come on. They're not going to beat them.
That's an easier bandwagon to jump on, though.
Yeah.
The Islanders won.
I agree.
And I think a lot of it's because of the atmosphere that they have inside that building, whereas in Montreal, they only have like 2,000 fans. But
I think it's the way they play, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Coliseum last night was 100% sold out.
Yeah.
And just completely deafening all night long. So it was awesome.
Okay, so how much of a chance you guys give them against Tampa Bay?
I give them a better chance against Tampa than Montreal against Colorado or Vegas. That's not saying much, but
right. Yeah.
I mean, it's in the high 20s, low 30s percentage to win.
Wow, that's high.
I mean, it's high, but it's really not in the NHL playoffs.
Yeah.
I would give Montreal like a 15% chance to beat Colorado or Vegas.
I wouldn't even go that far.
Yeah. I don't think either one's likely, but I think with the way the Islanders play, a lot of scores in that series going to end up being like 2-1. I mean, there's going to be a lot of 2-1 games.
Man, I know they play that way, but the opponent.
I know.
I'll tip the cap if that's how it goes.
Well, weren't a lot of the Islanders Lightning games like that last year in the bubble when they played in the Eastern Conference Final?
There's not much room out there, and Vasilevsky's so good. Like it's not like the Islanders are going to go out there and just light up Tampa.
No, it has to be that way.
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
got to be that way.
Yeah, but I just you get them on the power play, and we'll see.
Kenny on Twitter says, "I hate the Habs. I love Trotzy and pulling for him to lead the Islanders back to Stanley Cup greatness. It's a great way to say screw you to the Capitals as well." I think there is some of that. I think he's kind of already done that though.
He has, but if to Joe's point, if he goes out and beats Tampa to go to the Stanley Cup Final with the Islanders, that is the ultimate double bird to DC.
When we come back, we'll continue the discussion on Barry Trotz and relate it back to the Nashville Predators. Has Trotz's success since he's left Nashville exposed David Poile here with the Predators? We'll talk about that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
the series is over. They eliminate Boston in 6, and they will head to the Stanley Cup semifinals for a second straight year, where they'll meet the Tampa Bay Lightning once again.
We recognize this is a special moment for this building, and guys understood the magnitude of this game, the importance of the game, and this is a group that's very easy to. You don't have to say too many things. You just have to give them a little reminder that they're really a solid veteran group. They understand the moments, and this was a moment for them and our crowd, and it was what a great atmosphere.
That was Barry Trotz after the New York Islanders last night dispose of the Boston Bruins. The Islanders moving on to the Stanley Cup semifinals in the playoffs. Barry Trotz getting things done once again on the island. What an exciting call that was.
Who is that?
I don't know.
I believe his name is Chris King, the Islanders radio network.
Chris King.
He was fired up. I like the passion.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all follow Frankie Borelli on Twitter with Barstool.
Yeah.
Who
I saw the tweet. I don't, but I saw the
thing has
tweet.
become a phenomenon with him as an Islanders fan on Long Island.
He's fired up.
And they had a live video stream of him watching the game inside the arena last night with his Boston dude from Barstool. And the video of him going nuts after the Islanders made it 4-1 made it look like they had just won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hilarious.
Look, Islanders fans, they've been waiting on this for a while. It's been a long time since they've been doing this.
And they didn't get to do this last year.
Exactly.
I mean, they had to watch all these games from home last year when they made it to the third round for the first time in forever.
Yeah. So Barry Trotz, I mean, he's bringing joy to Long Island out there.
There's a T-shirt of St. Barry.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's pretty good.
It's hilarious.
By the way, the New York Saints, too, according to Bruce Cassidy, Boston Bruins head coach.
Oh, yes.
Complaining about officiating. There's been a lot of complaining about officiating in the playoffs so far. Brenda Moore, Bruce Cassidy.
Incredible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's always a thing, but I do feel like it's way increased this year.
So what does this all mean when you try to relate this conversation back to the Predators? Barry Trotz, as we know, he was here for a long time. His last season here came at the end of the 2014 season. And look, he's been a guy that obviously he's proven. He's a pretty good coach. I do think back to that time. You'd missed the playoffs for 2 years in a row. Now the second year, Pekka Rinne was hurt for like 50 games. So there was that to factor in as well. And they made a run and got close down the stretch. But it did kind of feel like, they had that run in 12 where they got put out in the second round. They missed the playoffs the next year. They missed the playoffs the year after that, and it just kind of felt like it was time with Barry Trotz to move on and to go in a different direction. As we know, David Poile stuck around. He made the decision to bring in Peter Laviolette, and we know what's happened since then. The Predators have had some success. They obviously get to the Stanley Cup final. I would say the Peter Laviolette move worked out, but Barry Trotz has also been very successful in his other stops. What do we think the success of Trotz says about the Predators, says about David Poile hanging on here? Has Barry Trotz exposed David Poile to some degree? And I say that because of this. I mean, I tweeted out last night just a gif of Barry Trotz's face laughing. I got like 3 replies about how the Predators made the wrong decision. They should have kept Trotz over Poile. I mean, I get it. You're going to get that on Twitter, and obviously with what he's done, it's hard to argue. He's a great coach. There's no question about that. I do feel like it was, just thinking back to that time, it was time to move ahead and get a new philosophy. But as you look at the results since then, could you make an argument the Predators made the wrong move?
Well, before I answer that, take me back to the move. I mean, this was David Poile's decision, correct?
Yep, it was.
So who was going to make the other decision
back
then?
I mean, I guess Sigarin. I don't know.
He was the majority owner back then? Or
Yep.
He was the head of the ownership group? Yeah, okay. Chairman?
Yeah.
I mean,
think about the immediate after that from David Poile. It's pretty good. I mean, draft picks were good, coming in, making an impact. You had your decor at the time of Seth Jones, Shea Weber, the Weber-Subban trade. You built the Stanley Cup final roster. You built the President's Trophy roster. Now, we know what's happened since then. But, I mean, at the time, I think back to right after the Predators made it to the Cup final and the conversation going on in Washington about Trotz. I mean, if you would have asked people at the time, it wasn't close. Like,
exactly.
The Predators made the right decision.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think one thing it says is, again, the coach is going to get blamed way more than anybody else, especially in this league.
Yep.
But I think at that point, both had performed awfully well, right?
Yep.
I mean, what was the justification or the reasoning on Trotz was just like a new voice is needed, or just
new style, new voice,
new style, to try to be more offensively dangerous, stuff like that. And like you said, it worked out. I mean, it's kind of like it's very different, but I think of like the Ryan Johansson trade. So he could go downhill from here. Seth Jones could, wherever he plays, could be just a Hall of Fame player. And I'll still say, that was a good trade for the Preds. They got exactly what they needed in terms of personnel, but also in terms of performance in the immediate aftermath, and it was a surplus player on the other side for them. It's an absolute good trade. But if that happens, you'll hear that in retrospect.
I mean, you're already hearing it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It'll be louder. I mean, so I don't – look, Poyle, like you said, the problems have been since then, have been long after Trotz was gone, so I don't necessarily make that connection.
Well, at GatorsZ on Twitch says, give Trotz a blank check and bring him back home.
There you go.
I don't think it's happening at this point. I think that ship has probably sailed. Would be my guess. I don't think the Islanders are going to let him go.
Yeah.
He might have a lifetime contract on Long Island.
He very well might. I mean, he's doing some stuff that they've not seen around there since –
the 80s.
Early 80s?
Yeah.
Pat LaFontaine?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a while on Long Island. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Rob from Franklin, who wants to weigh in. Rob, thanks for calling in to Robby and Rexrode.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I think of the success of the 5 teams that are remaining as kind of a trifecta of what is important to a really strong NHL team. And if you want to take the New York Islanders as a for instance, you've got Matthew Barzal, Anders Lee who's hurt, Kyle Palmieri, and then you've got a really strong goalie and then a really strong system. So you've got the triangulation on a superstar, a really good goalie, and a strong system. And the X factor there, to me, is they really bought into the system, very strong defensively. And they have they seem to always have a crop of goalies that they can pull upon, and cite Mitch Corner for that, who followed Barry Trotz there.
Yep.
So you've got, and Mitch Corn probably, I've got, my son is a up-and-coming 12, 13-year-old goalie, and when you watch some of the things that Mitch Corn does, it just is absolutely unique. Then you've got, you want to take another, you could cite the same examples with Lightning. A true superstar, right? Somebody that you can count on for 40 goals. Got it? Check. A true goalie, somebody that you can count on for stopping pretty much anything. Check. What's happening in Montreal? I'm from Montreal. What's happening in Montreal right now is actually kind of special. You've got some pretty young people coming up that have made a huge impact. A really good system on a coach that is as fresh as any that was replaced this year. And the X Factor, Carey Price, who's absolutely playing out of his mind. He's square. He's big. He's, by the way, a big goalie. He just doesn't look it when he's in a stance, but he's a very big guy. I think he's 6'2", 6'3", playing incredibly well. And then, I think who makes it out of the Colorado Vegas series will depend largely on goaltending as well, I think. But then you have absolutely great goaltending, absolutely great system, and then superstars. Okay, what are we missing here? We have a good goalie. Is he a superstar goalie? No, but he's up and coming. So you've got to tip your hat for Poyle and the scouting team. They've done a great job at bringing in good goalies. They've done that. But never have they been able to solve the one puzzle, and he's tried to go out and cheat it by trading for it. He's tried to solve the problem of how do I get that superstar? You might have a decent system, but how do I get that superstar? They've never been able to solve that puzzle. And until I truly believe that he is not very, very good. Boyle is not good at addressing good forward talent up and coming, and it's just a matter of I think it's a matter of time before he exits stage left and we get somebody that can address that.
All right, thanks for the call, Rob. We appreciate it. I mean, look, that's going to be a conversation on David Boyle and has been for a long time. Like, you've got to find a way to get that game changing forward, and we're going to discuss this a little bit more when we come back in terms of the plan of attack this offseason. But part of the equation is, like, you've never really been bad enough to have a draft pick like a Nathan McKinnon or a Connor McDavid or a Jonathan Toews, a Patrick Kane. I mean, that's part of this equation too, but there's no question about it. You've got to be better at finding and identifying and drafting top-end forward talent, and that has not been a strength for the Predators under David Boyle. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on the Predators, get to their plan of attack for this offseason, what needs to happen to get this Predators team closer to contention. We'll talk about that next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. 102.5 The Game and T-Mobile have partnered up to give you a chance to experience a Nashville SC game this season. Tune in every Monday to Darren, Donick, and Chase for the keyword to text in to win. Good luck from 102.5 The Game, T-Mobile, and Nashville SC. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. 615-737-1025. Greg on the text line says, John Tavares made the wrong choice. He should have stayed with the Islanders. Maybe so. I think it's worked out pretty well for the Islanders, though. A little bit more cap space, too.
Yeah. It's kind of like when Suter left.
Yeah.
I mean, that ended up being a blessing when he left the Preds.
Yep.
You could say the same about Tavares.
I agree. I'm sure he's probably maybe rethinking what happened at this point, given what's going on in Toronto and what's going on in New York since he's left. But I think the Islanders are going to be okay without him.
Yeah, so Rob Franklin.
Yep.
Some good points. Verbose.
Yes.
On the call. I think I think he brings up a good point there about some of the common threads. I think there's still wide, differences between some of those teams, and there's multiple stars on some of those teams, right?
Right. Well, like Tampa, I mean, it's kind of a different game in Tampa. You've got three guys at forward, that are just elite.
Yeah.
Braden Point, Steven Stamkos, Kucherov. Those three guys are – go watch Braden Point play in the playoffs.
And what he's done in this
postseason
is silly. But, I like the goalie thing. Look, there's a lot of things that have gone on in that Vegas-Colorado series, but is this a little – if it keeps going this way, is it a little bit on, the goalie?
The difference
right?
between Marc-Andre Fleury and Philip Grubauer is pretty large.
And we can go back and point out that immediately when he was a Vezina finalist, it was like, guys, I think you're kind of missing why someone should be a Vezina finalist and why someone shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly.
I also don't know how truly well built for the playoffs Colorado is. Like when push comes to shove, like Vegas has a gear in them for playoff style hockey that I don't know if Colorado can truly match.
It's so funny because I was with Robby not long ago, like, are they going to lose? They're ridiculous. But sometimes those ridiculous skill teams eventually run into that.
Well, you come out in game one, and they just blitzed Vegas. It was 7-1. And I was like, oh, my goodness. Vegas has been the better team ever since then. And it really hasn't been all that close. Like, Colorado's had their moments, and they had their moments in the first couple of periods of Game 5 the other night. But Vegas has been pretty largely better since then. So, look, we'll see if they can respond tonight. When you have Nathan McKinnon, you give yourself a chance. And, to Rob's point, the Predators don't have that guy. Like, we've talked about it with Forsberg. I think we've seen enough out of Forsberg at this point to know he's not that guy. He's really good, and he is absolutely a part of the Predators' future. He should be. I think they should sign him to an extension. But I think if you're operating under the assumption that one day Philip Forsberg is just all of a sudden going to be a 40-goal scorer and put up 80 points in a year, like, to me, does he have the talent to do that? Yeah, but I just haven't seen him do it at this point. It's difficult for me to just think all of a sudden that's going to happen.
Yeah, the answer is not Forsberg become a totally different level of player. You're really keeping him. You're happy to have him. You need – if you don't have that guy, like Rob brought up there, like some teams do, then you need multiple Forsberg-level players performing at that level, right?
Yeah.
And that's more the answer than, hey, Philip, get back to all of a sudden you don't miss any games anymore and you're 40-point or 40-goal, 70-point whatever guy. It's not what he's going to be. It's not what he is.
So we had Adam Vingan on yesterday from The Athletic to kind of look ahead at this offseason for the Predators and the plan of attack. And that plan of attack really starts with the expansion draft. You got to figure out what you're going to do in the expansion draft. You can protect 7 forwards, go with 3 defensemen and a goalie, or you can go the 8 skater route, which the more I think about it, I think that may be the route the Predators end up going. And Adam Vingan discussed that yesterday, the expansion draft and the route that the Predators could take, the challenges that presents as well. Here's what Adam Vingan from The Athletic had to say yesterday discussing the Predators and the expansion draft.
I think it would be poor asset management to lose one of those two defensemen, either Carrier, who's under contract, I think, for 2 more years at less than $800,000, or Dante Fabro, who's a restricted free agent. So I went and looked at the forwards, and quite frankly, after the 3 forwards I protected, I couldn't figure out a 4th one. So, I went with 3 forwards and 5 defensemen. I think the New York Islanders were the only team in the Vegas expansion draft who did that. And this is a guesstimate. I'm not sure the Predators even know what they're doing yet. But, to me, protecting 5 defensemen, 3 forwards, leaving both Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson exposed, I think would be, in my opinion, the right way to go.
So that was Adam Vingan yesterday on the show discussing his plan of attack for the expansion draft. The more I think about it, Joe, the more I think the option of going with 5 defensemen that you protect and 3 forwards seems pretty likely. Like, to me, that's a logical choice for the Predators based on the way that Alex Carrier has played coming down the stretch this year. And I'm with Adam. Like, I'm looking at forwards to protect on this group right now. Like, I'm not protecting Johansson or Duchene. Quite frankly, I don't think Seattle's going to take either one of them. I'm protecting Luke Cunnin. You're protecting Philip Forsberg. And then you've got an interesting decision after that. I mean, you could protect Arvidsson, I guess, if you want to keep him around as an asset and see if he can either figure it out or try to trade him after the expansion draft comes and goes. Yarncroke, Sissons, I mean, those are 2 options as well. But to Adam's point, like, you get much past those 3 guys in this discussion, like, it's difficult to nail down a concrete 4th forward that I would protect.
Well, first of all, you need it to not matter who you protect, right?
Yep.
You need it. You need to know who they're taking, and it needs to be whoever of those 2 guys that you beg them to take. And then it doesn't matter. But if you're just going in and there's no deal made and you're protecting people, I would protect Arvidsson because I think that they would definitely take Arvidsson if you left him exposed. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I think. I think that would be a pretty talented top 6 forward who still can make the absolute case that he's got a lot of good hockey ahead of him for a not steep price, and I think they would take him. And I think if you protect him and Sissons is available and you do it that way and you protect the 5 defensemen, then at least there's a chance that they would look at one of your centers. But again, I mean, the protection list to me needs to be a non-issue if things go well for David Poile.
Yeah, I mean, he's talked about wanting to have conversations with Ron Francis leading up to it. I mean, I just – is there a chance that they would take Duchene or Johansson if left exposed? Yeah, there's a chance. But if I'm Seattle, there's not really any way I'm considering doing that unless I'm getting something back in addition to it. And then the question becomes, all right, well, what does that mean? Well, like, what is that? Is it a first-round pick in addition to it? Is it – Rem Pitlick in addition to it? Like, what does that mean? And what's your level of comfort if you're David Poile as to what you'd be willing to give up to rid yourself of one of those 2 contracts?
What would you give up?
I'm not giving up a first-round pick.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, that's steep.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the same thing as an NFL first-round pick, but I might – God, it would hurt, but I might give up Rem Pitlick for it. Like,
would they accept that? Just
I don't know.
Like Rem Pitlick and a third?
I mean, he would probably take another draft pick, yeah.
Rem Pitlick.
I'm not doing Rem Pitlick in a first. There's no way.
Yeah, Rem Pitlick in a third. Would they take that? Is there any chance they'd take that and then take Duchene?
There's a chance. I still don't think it's a high chance.
They're going to say, wait, Rem Pitlick? What about this Tomasino kid here?
Yeah.
What about this kid?
That's a non-starter for me.
Well, I mean, I guess it could come down to how much Ron Francis in Seattle wants to stock the cupboard, because you don't really have much of a cupboard right now.
Yep.
So do you want to throw in a Rem Pitlick in that cupboard and, maybe he turns into a 3rd or 4th liner, years down the road for Seattle? Or does he play right away for Seattle and contribute? I think it comes down to how much they want to just build on some assets and also get a talented player, but maybe overpaid player like Duchesne or Johansson.
Yep.
Well, I could be wrong, but I honestly, I'm just thinking Duchesne. I think now, I guess if you're in talks with them and they're like, no, but Johansson, let's talk, then okay, fine. But if I'm the Preds, I think it's an easy choice between the two. That's just my opinion. I think it's an easy choice.
Well,
I would rather keep Johansson.
I would probably rather keep Johansson too, but I mean, the fact is it's going to be difficult to rid yourself of either one of them. So if you can do one and Johansson's easier to get rid of, is it worth just freeing up the $8 million per year at that point? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is.
I mean, it's imagine the scenario where that's it, and Ron Francis is like, look, I'm not interested in Duchesne, but Johansson, yeah, well, let's talk about him. And so that happens, and you don't re-sign Granlund, and now your team is built around number one center Matt Duchesne.
Yeah. It's a rough spot. It's a rough spot to be in. We'll continue this discussion when we come back. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Go to theGameNashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. Purchase a $30 Boom Boss Crab Pizza and Tap House gift card for only $15. Try their award-winning pizza, 20-plus local beers and drafts at all locations. It's the place to go to bring the family or come for pizza, beer, and sports. 4 Middle Tennessee locations in Bellevue, Murfreesboro, Spring Hill, and in East Nashville as well. which has a huge video wall. We were in Boom Boss a couple weeks ago for Ryan Porth. Great location. Great job there by Boom Boss, Craft Pizza and Tap House. You can go get yours now at thegamenashville.com. Porth, a big fan of Boom Boss, Craft Pizza and Tap House.
It's a great spot.
It is a great spot. Watch a lot of good sports in there. I'll go back in, Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Talking Predators, taking your thoughts on the plan of attack for the Predators in the offseason. @_up2late_ on Twitter says, get Duchesne better line mates. Seems like a nice guy, but consider moving on from the coach.
There you go. It's always the coach's fault. Fire the coach.
I'm going to go out and say that John Hines, he'll be back next year.
I will second that. I think you're probably right.
Danny on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, keep in mind, Seattle also has to reach the salary cap floor. If they're close or below, you might see either center get taken. There's a chance they do have to reach the salary cap floor. I would also say that of the 31 teams that they're going to be selecting from, actually 30, because I don't think Vegas is getting chosen from, that's a conversation for a different day.
Totally fair.
Yeah. So 30 teams that they're choosing from, they're going to find a way. It's going to be relatively easy, I think, to get to the cap floor. So is that via the Predators? Maybe. Like it could be with Duchesne and Johansson. But it's not like they're just absolutely going to have to select either Duchesne or Johansson to make it to the cap floor.
What if they say, we'll take Johansson, but only if you throw in Duchesne? They'll make the floor.
Oh, they'll make the floor.
There's a lot of other teams out there who totally believe that the Kraken are about to take bad deals off their hands. So keep that in mind.
And I do wonder how much have general managers around the league, David Poyle included, learned from what happened with Vegas a couple years ago. Like Florida got absolutely fleeced a couple of years ago by Vegas. They took Marcia Show and Riley Smith, and right now Marcia Show and Riley Smith are lighting up the Colorado Avalanche, and were a big part of them getting to the Stanley Cup final the first year they were a team.
Who did they want to keep because of that?
I don't even remember, but it was not worth it. I can promise you that.
You also have Columbus giving them William Karlsson to take David Clarkson's contract.
And Karlsson scored 40 goals that year. So a lot of fleecing going on. And look, in some ways, I kind of feel bad for Seattle because the expectation is now going to be to come in and be really good immediately. And the likelihood is that's probably not going to happen. Like, they're probably not going to be all that good. But I do wonder how much general managers around the league have learned from the absolute fleecing that took place with Vegas last time around.
Speaking of Vegas, by the way, they've also somehow fired a coach in the middle of all this success, too. So just imagine that.
Yes, they have.
Incredible.
It's pretty nuts to see how that's worked out. So beyond that, the expansion draft is its own animal, and there are a lot of different ways that could go. Who do we think the most likely trade candidates are this offseason for the Predators? Like, I have a feeling, I don't know exactly who it's going to be, but I just kind of get the feeling something's going to happen this offseason. Like, I feel like somebody's going to get traded that maybe you're either not thinking about or maybe a core member of this team is going to get traded. Who do we think the most likely trade candidate would be?
Well, Arvidsson, and then I'd go Ellis. And I don't disagree with what you guys have said about Ellis and the strong feeling within the organization that they don't want to move him. They like him a lot. He's a very good player. But I can't really think of anybody else who – I mean, Forsberg? That would be – like, to me, I mean, that would be the shocker. And then it's like, what are you getting back?
Yeah.
I can't see it. Obviously, we know that Yossi is not even a candidate, and they would never do that anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you throw Ekholm on there as a possibility too.
Maybe Fabro?
Well, now that's true. I mean, certainly one of those guys, but yeah, he would certainly be an interesting case of young, skilled, talented.
I mean, you're not getting a ton back for Dante Fabro.
Right.
I still think my top answer is Arvidsson, but I still think you got to look at Ellis. I really do. Like, again, I don't know how much willingness is going to be there, but you've tried this formula now for a few years, and I get why. Ellis, Ekholm, Yossi, All very good players. We all recognize that. As much heat as Ryan Ellis takes, about 85-90% of what you see from Ryan Ellis is pretty good. I mean, it's pretty good from Ryan Ellis. He's had his moments where he's struggled in the playoffs, but he's a pretty good player. I still think around the league, he's got pretty good value. I don't think his contract, even though it's not cheap, I mean, it's $6.25 million per year, I don't think that that's just automatically going to spook teams away from him. I don't. I think you can find some teams that are willing to take on that contract, and you could still get a pretty decent return for him. Like, are you just going to every year keep trotting out Yossi, Ellis, and Ekholm and just rolling the dice and trying to build the rest of the team from there around those guys? I don't know. Like, I get why you would take that approach, and they're all really good. But to me, you got to find a way to start getting some offense in here. Like, you've got to find a way to start scoring some goals. I mean, you have to in the playoffs. You had Carolina right there in Game 5. You needed somebody to make a play. They couldn't do it. You had them right. I mean, you had your skate on their throat in Game 6. You needed somebody to make a play. They couldn't do it. That's a pretty consistent theme with this group. Like, they've got to find a way to get more offense in here. I would consider trading Ryan Ellis. I would.
So if you did that, you're talking about a top four now, of course. Yossi, Ekholm, Fabro, Carrier.
Yep.
And you're presumably, like you said, I mean, if you made a move like this, it is absolutely a forward coming back.
Yeah.
You know? Got any ideas?
I don't know. I mean, I've heard people throw out Mitch Marner. It's not going to happen. Like, it's going to take more than Ryan Ellis. I mean, you'd have to give up a monstrous package to go get Mitch Marner. I don't know exactly what it would be. I mean, look, general managers, they're going to have to do a bit of finagling this offseason. With the cap being what it is, if you want to change your team, by and large, it's probably not going to come through free agency. I mean, you can make some changes every now and then, but
right,
largely it's going to have to come via trade and, like, swapping salary. So I don't know exactly who that would be at this point. But, I mean, I do think there are some options out there that Ryan Ellis would be very attractive. I mean, I think a lot of teams would love to have Ryan Ellis on their team.
Well, and free agency obviously isn't as appealing for the players, but of course that if the cap truly is going to be flat for multiple years here, yeah, it's just not going to be as good.
Yep.
And maybe that does help the Preds again get what I think is very key for next year's team, and that's getting Granlund back.
Yep. No, I think I'm very interested to see what his contract is going to look like. Is it a one-year deal? Like, does he go back with a one-year deal again? I probably wouldn't. Like, knowing that it's probably going to be a flat cap.
Right, like,
just go 2-3 years. But
yeah.
I don't know. I'm interested to see how he handles that. I mean, Taylor Hall is going to be an unrestricted free agent. Does he sign a longer-term deal? I mean, he's lit it up in Boston since he's been traded. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that are on the table. But to me, like, if you're the Predators and you're going to change this team significantly, it's probably going to have to come via trade this year. Would be my guess. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there'll be a player in the Taylor Hall sweepstakes, and then he can come here and
should fans
disappoint,
expect a trade? Like you know, because like the Shea Weber Subban thing that came out of the blue.
Yeah, I would say yeah. Like if I had to put a percentage on it, I'd say I would go better than 50%. There's a significant trade this offseason. That's just that's the vibe I get. What about you? Do you get a vibe that a significant move could be coming forth?
I mean, probably.
I mean, David Poyle talked about the team it's going to be different next year. Now we know that with the expansion draft it's going to be different, but I don't get the sense that they're just rolling it back with this core group next year. I don't know. Honestly, I don't really know how you could justify that at this point.
Could the significant move just be a scenario where Seattle takes Duchesne?
Could be.
In a move like that, and David Poyle doesn't do much of anything else on the trade front, or
it could be.
Does it continue from there?
I guess I've always looked at that as the start of something. You clear that space.
So then
what are you doing with that space, right? That's what I would think, but you're trade vibing.
Well, the space might be to re-sign Ekholm and Forsberg.
Could be.
And that's somewhat depressing, isn't it? To think that, like, how is this team going to take a big step if it's just getting rid of people?
Recycling through the players and getting rid of people, yeah. I mean, that's a tough spot to be in. When we come back, we will switch gears, get back into the Titans Teresa Walker from the Associated Press will join us. That's coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesaling Studios powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, hour number 3 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Talking Titans, and to help us do that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in the great Teresa Walker from the Associated Press. Teresa, what's going on? How we doing?
Well, just trying to not grow, fungus or something with all this rain we're getting, but other than that, yeah, I'm trying to grow some tomatoes, and I just can't get any sun on them because it's just too wet.
It has been quite the wet week here in Nashville. Hopefully at some point that stops moving forward here. The Titans moving up their practice today from 1 o'clock to 11 o'clock. It looks like Julio Jones could be in attendance today. Teresa, let's just start there. What are your thoughts on this deal for the Titans bringing in Julio Jones? How big a deal is this? What do you think this does for the Titans and their bottom line of where they stack up in the AFC?
Well, the Titans almost had to make this move. I mean, we saw them go through free agency, and no offense to Josh Reynolds, I know he told us that he thinks that he can, take that step and be a starting wide receiver in the NFL and not just working in the slot. But the Titans had to replace a lot of production with Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith. And as we saw in that playoff game with Baltimore, once Corey Davis kind of, went to the sideline with an injury, Ravens were able to kind of double team A.J. Brown and smother Derrick Henry. You've got to have somebody else that, to keep defenses from locking down on those two. The draft, no offense again to Des Fitzpatrick, but that just didn't seem enough. So, as soon as we saw the state of the Atlanta salary cap situation, it just seemed like this was a deal that made sense for both teams. And at this point, for the Titans offense, last year, only the Chiefs had more yards than they did per game, and they ranked fourth in scoring offense. And to at least try to maintain in the AFC, they needed to make this move. I mean, we saw a year ago, Buffalo lost in the AFC wildcard game to Houston, and then they went out and traded for Stephon Diggs. And look what they did. They go to the conference championship. Now, granted, they lost to Kansas City in Kansas City, and that's what I think everyone in the AFC is trying to do, is figure out a way to get home field advantage away from the Chiefs. But that was a move that they kind of had to make just to be competitive.
So, in your mind, Teresa, first of all, where did you think the Titans before this stood relative to the Colts and relative to the rest of the AFC, would-be contenders, and has that positioning changed significantly in your mind?
Well, I'm not one of the people buying. I need to see Carson Wentz look like the Carson Wentz that he was when Frank Reich was his quarterback's coach in Philly. I need to see that. Unfortunately, Frank Reich isn't getting that Carson Wentz. He's got the Carson Wentz who's had injuries and lots of issues that have kept him out of the lineup. And, I want to see, can he fix the stories that we were hearing out of Philly about, that maybe Carson wasn't the most accountable guy, that, nothing was ever really his fault. I've seen that in other quarterbacks, and it's not a combination that works well. So maybe getting back with Frank Reich fixes all, and he is great, and that's the piece the Colts need. And if that's the case, then, the Titans absolutely needed this move to make sure that they're keeping pace with the Colts in the division. But, Titans are still the defending division champs in the AFC South. So and with 5 straight winning seasons, this is a team that, it just constantly gets overlooked. And it feels like, yes, they've got a lot of great pieces in Indy. You know about Darius Leonard. You know about how good that defense was, the offensive line, but which, by the way, they had a change in their offensive line. It's not the same line as it was last year. You had a retirement on that line. So, and the Titans get back some guy named Taylor Lewan on their offense in a year where they became, they had a 3,500-plus yard passer. They had a 2,000-yard rusher. And, that line, they only gave up 25 sacks last season. So, I've been covering this team since they moved to the state. This team, no matter what they do, it just seems like they slide under the radar. It's never good enough. They have to go prove who they are and what they've done, and so nothing has changed. I do think that they'll have more than a good chance to defend their division championship and, maybe get more than one game at home. Now, they'll have to figure out how to win those games in January, obviously, but, I think this move puts them in good contention to defend their AFC South title.
Teresa Walker from the Associated Press on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So, Teresa, we were talking about this earlier in the show. There are a lot of people that should benefit for Julio Jones coming into the Titans. I've got A.J. Brown at the top of my list. How big a deal do you think this could be for A.J. Brown? As you look at A.J. Brown through the first 2 years of his career and kind of forecast forward, what do you think the ceiling for A.J. Brown in this league could be? How good do you think A.J. Brown could end up being?
I think that he could end up maybe being the next Julio Jones. I mean, look at, Julio Jones has just dominated the past 10 years, right? First in yards receiving, this, that, and the other thing. Well, look at what A.J. Brown did last year, and we find out after the season that he had to have surgery not on one knee but 2 knees. And, he probably after that Denver game could have, taken and had surgery then and fixed some things. But instead he plays a whole season on aching knees and is a Pro Bowler. So, and now you bring in a Julio Jones so that, he was going to be double-teamed like crazy this year. Now there's Julio Jones. Who do you double-team? So I fully expect him to have a better year than last year and potentially be a Pro Bowler yet again and help keep this offense. This offense last year, as good as it was, there were times where it felt like it could be better, and it feels like this is going to help Brown, take that next step. And you got Derrick Henry and Julio Jones. This is going to be an offense that should be very fun to watch. For fans who remember the Jeff Fisher days, 9-7, 13-10. No. That's long gone. They're going to keep the fireworks going at Nissan Stadium this year.
Well, look, it's someone who's covered this team from the start, Teresa, I've got to ask you how this compares to other acquisitions, off-season stories. I mean, look, I'll be honest. I don't get excited about OTAs ever. I don't get excited about spring football ever. I'm kind of excited to try my hand at some sweet Julio Jones videos today on the practice field. Like, as you look back over 20-plus years of covering this team, how does this one rank for you? Even as something that kind of sent shockwaves around the league and made this team a top point of discussion for days in a row now.
Well, I think it's easily at the top. I mean, this is a franchise. I remember when they signed Yancey Thigpen from Pittsburgh, and that was going to be a big piece. You know, they were making a big move to help the offense, and injuries kind of limited Yancey's ability to make an impact. There's been Carl Pickens was once brought in here to help this offense, and that really fizzled out. Randy Moss, the waiver wire claim that I still think was mostly to kind of, keep the Colts from getting him. That didn't work out well. He played 8 games, same 8 games that Andre Johnson played when they brought him in a few years ago here. His biggest contribution was he caught that touchdown pass, to help them win in Detroit. A much-needed win that year. I think that was one of their 3 wins that season. They brought in, David Givens was a guy. They have brought in a lot of wide receivers hoping that they could be the guy. And kind of like, with A.J. Brown, it's like for years, it's like they're going to draft a receiver. And when you think it's going to be, Kendall Wright or Corey Davis is going to be that guy, then something just never quite clicks or works out. So A.J. Brown kind of turned the tide on that. And now Julio Jones and the Titans have a chance to set a new mark with success in trading for a wide receiver to help this team. I'm looking forward to it. So, but because I remembered all those names, I'm going to need to see Julio Jones be that guy this season for the Titans. Do I think he can do that? Absolutely. But I'm remembering. I need to see Joe to buy into. Everything looks great, sounds great. They needed this move. Now I need to see it pay off.
No question. And what about the cost? A second-round pick. Those can be very important. The cap. Obviously, you are making it tighter later when you kick the can down the road. The cap does exist. It is a factor. It does matter. Are you comfortable with the price? Surprised also that another team out there, because I'm a little surprised that another team out there wasn't willing to go about that far or a little bit more than what the Titans did to get him.
Well, when you put the draft picks along with the money that you're spending this year, that's a big commitment. And, here's the thing, and I like the fact that it's been, I think it was Mike Sando first noted it on Twitter. If the Titans had picked up Corey Davis's fifth-year option, it would have been $15.68 million. And instead, they're paying $15.3 million for Julio Jones. And if you look at it just like that, I think Titan fans would take that every day of the week and 5 times on Sunday, just because of the production by each of those receivers. And then you add in the draft picks, and that's. You might really could want that second-round pick. I mean, Derrick Henry was a second-round pick, so you can't poo-poo those, right? Those are very important ones. You need to be hitting on your first, second, and third rounders for sure. But that said, this is a franchise that is trying to. Their window is right now, Joe. Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry under contract for the next 3 years. And this is a chance to, add a piece to make sure they're competitive as possible and trying to win, the Super Bowl. And that's what this whole game is about. It's not about saving draft picks. It's not about making sure your cap space. And by the way, on the salary cap space, y'all notice the TV contract that they signed recently that's, going to just almost double the amount of money coming in, like up to $300 million per team or whatever. That's not, just survive until that TV money starts coming in. And we know now, don't forget, this trade was made about 10 days or so after the NFL kind of let everybody know what the ceiling cap will be for next year. I think it's $208 million next year. So, that gave them some budget certainty for 2022. And, hey, they had the money sitting there. They redo Ryan Tannehill's deal as we expected, create that cash by, making, doing their little NFL financials. And, yes, this deal just makes too much sense across the board. At a certain point, you have to try to win. You're not just trying to win a game. You're trying to win a title. And AFC South is nice, but this franchise has been to one Super Bowl and one Super Bowl only after the 99 season. And with 5 straight winning seasons, that's the next step to try to get to.
Teresa Walker from the Associated Press has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Does a great job covering the Titans and really everything here in the Middle Tennessee area. Teresa.
And Tennessee overall.
Yeah, Tennessee overall. Tennessee, great. Teresa, great stuff as always. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you both.
Absolutely.
I'll see you out there for some sweet video taking, Teresa.
It's going to be awesome. Looking forward to it coming up.
We'll fight for position.
That's right.
There we go. I like it. We'll come back, react a little bit to what Teresa had to say there, and also throw this question out there. What's the biggest injury concern you've got heading into this season for the Titans? Caleb Farley, Bud Dupree, Julio Jones? How would you answer that question? We'll do that next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Listen to the game every weekday for your chance to win $1,000. It's the game's 1K payday presented by Kentucky Kingdom and Hurricane Bay. Listen for keywords at 9 o'clock, at noon, and at 3. And when you hear it, Go to thegamenashville.com and enter the keyword for a shot at $1,000. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Now, the Titans will be on the field coming up at 11 o'clock, and this coming from Diana Rossini a little bit earlier this morning. Titans are going to be on the field today. They've moved their practice up from 1 o'clock, and apparently, according to Diana Rossini, Julio Jones is expected to be on the field for the first time with the team. Turron Davenport adding that he expects A.J. Brown to be there as well. So Julio Hoopla taking another step today with apparently Julio Jones going to be on the field for the Tennessee Titans. That's exciting. I'm interested to see what that looks like. This may be the most interested I've ever been in an OTA practice.
Yeah, and also expected to talk with us.
Yes.
So you'll hear from Julio Jones. If A.J. Brown's out there, TD reported he expects A.J. Brown to be out there. I wonder, was that going to be the case? Or was like, Julio's going to be there? Well, I'm coming out there too. It's pretty wild, man. OTA. Looking forward to an OTA session.
Think we're going to see the full route tree today between A.J. and Julio? Could be good to see.
I don't know. I'm trying to think this is where a Malcolm Butler is missed. I'd love to see Malcolm Butler saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go on number 2 here," and then talk some smack if he gets a PBU or something. I don't know, man. It's going to be quite a scene. Interested to see what they do actually on the field. Of course, next week is mini camp, so next week is the mandatory team mini camp. You expect most guys to be there. And you'll probably see a lot more than you see today. Although, hey, the Houston Texans, by the way, they did not need minicamp this week. How about
they've got everything figured out.
David Culler's like, we're good, man. We are good. We're all set. Yeah. We're all set for the season. I don't even need training camp. Let's go.
No minicamp needed here. That was an interesting decision by David Culley down in Houston. Meanwhile, Derrick Henry on Instagram yesterday, back to the workouts and did a 54-inch box jump yesterday, which is pretty incredible. So. Looks like he's in good shape.
That was one of those things where I saw it tweeted out because I'm not on Instagram and I never will be. I saw it tweeted out, and at first, those things are so fast. You're just like, okay, but then you really look at it. It's like, dude, how do you do that?
Oh yeah, I would fall on my face trying to do something like that.
That's a ton of work to get yourself to that.
Yes.
Can you imagine Derrick Henry, as a 2 guard, dunking on your head too, by the way?
Like Myles Garrett?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's probably somewhat similar.
Yeah. So
Titans also are don't ever play basketball or any pickup sports or ever get on a motorbike, please.
Please don't do anything except football, Derrick. Now, Derrick Henry traditionally in his career been a guy you don't worry about that much with injury, even though the position he plays can be very violent. He's very durable and is shown to be very durable so far in his career. But there are some players coming off significant injuries heading into this season. Bud Dupree, who the Titans have just given a lot of money to. Caleb Farley, who they've just selected in the first round with the back injuries, the sciatica problems that have come along with Caleb Farley as well. Julio Jones, coming off an injured season last year as well. If you're a Titans fan of those 3, Bud Dupree, Caleb Farley, and Julio Jones, what are you concerned about the most? Who are you concerned about the most when it comes to injuries heading into this season?
Well, I'll tell you who's a distant third. Julio Jones.
I agree.
A distant third. Both in terms of his injury history. Look, hammy, and those can be a problem. We saw Corey Davis's entire rookie year taken out by a hammy, right? So it's not a non-concern, but he played through it. He played 9 games. But also in terms of just if the question is who can you least afford to lose, he's a distant third to me. You can get by. Again, we thought this was going to be the offense with Tannehill and Henry and that offensive line, and A.J. Brown and Ferkshire and all those guys and Reynolds. You can get by. You can be good. The defense, it's a really close one between Dupree and Farley for me. I think I would go Dupree because, you have so little depth still.
Yeah.
Your 3 right now is a rookie, Rashad Weaver, who has off-the-field things going on, has a charge pending, and then you're back to kind of last year. I mean, with Farley, you're also not looking at a great depth situation at corner, but you have some guys who have played some football who can step in, even with Kevin Johnson retiring. So I think I would have to go Dupree.
I'm going Farley because I've got more confidence that Dupree's coming back and being healthy. Like, I got more confidence that Dupree's coming back in there and that the ACL eventually is going to get to a place where it's a non-factor with him. Like Caleb Farley, and we talked about this when he got drafted. I don't know what's going to happen with him. I mean, you got the back issues, the back surgeries that we've talked about. You know, everything you hear, it kind of sounds like he's going to be okay in the short term, but can he last? Like, can this be something where you get through a season and Caleb Farley's back has held up? Also, I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. He's not really played since 2019, so it's been 2 years since he's been on the football field. I'm concerned about that too. I mean, look, Bud Dupree, you're right. I mean, if they lost him and he comes back in and he's either not the same or he's not ready to go or if he gets hurt again, I mean, you're right back in the same situation you were last year at edge rusher. There's just not much there, and that's a huge concern heading into this season. But I look at Caleb Farley right now, especially based on the moves you've made in the secondary. I think it's so important for him to come in and to be ready to play. And if he's not, and especially if he's, if that back continues to be an issue, not only is it an issue this year, it's an issue as you move forward as well. I think Caleb Farley, quite frankly, he is pretty squarely at the top for me.
Well, I guess it's so if you break it into two questions, who are you more concerned about? Like who you think might have a bigger issue? I would agree. He's number one. If it's who is a bigger concern if you lose them, or who would hurt more, then I would put Dupree. But you're right. I mean, I think Bud Dupree, ACL, they get treated like ankle sprains almost these days. It's not what they are, but you expect him to be fine. The rehab, all indications going well, and the back stuff is hard to know, and it's like I think you're right. It sounds good and promising on the rehab and being ready front, but how affected is he? Is he diminished at all as a player? Some guys have been able to go through similar things and have been fine, which obviously the Titans think will happen with him, or else they wouldn't have taken him in the first round. But there's a lot. There's not a lot of certainty at this point.
So which injury concerns you the most if you're the Titans heading into training camp? Let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. We'll get to that coming up next. But right now, I got to tell you about my friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, and it's Fight Night coming up featuring the can't-miss rematch between Israel Adesanya and Marvin Vettori at UFC 263, and FanDuel is giving you 30-1 odds on either fighter to win the main event, and that means you can win $150 off of a $5 bet. Place your first bet on the FanDuel Sportsbook app using promo code ROB and get in on this incredible action. Then just sit back, watch the fist fly at Adesanya versus Vettori 2 on Saturday, June the 12th. FanDuel, it's my go-to for all my sports bets. It's easy to use, it's safe and secure, and they get you your money quickly in as little as 24 hours. And don't forget, you can only get this offer on the FanDuel Sportsbook app, so make sure you download it today and sign up using promo code ROB so they know that we sent you. Again, that promo code is ROB. You must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. New users only, must wager in designated offer market. A $10 first deposit required, $150 max bonus. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Join Stars for their annual golf tournament, the Hart Golf Classic, on Monday, June 14th at Vanderbilt Legends Club. Powered by Enterprise, this event is more than just a day of golf. It's a young person's future. The tournament is a scramble format with an 8 a.m. shotgun start. Breakfast and lunch will be provided. So register today and support the hope, health, and connection of our young people. The Hart Golf Classic for Stars Nashville on Monday, June 14th at Vanderbilt Legends Club. For more information, please visit starsnashville.org. That's starsnashville.org. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Somebody on Twitter's coming after me about saying sciatica and not properly pronouncing sciatica.
Hey, dummy, it's sciatica. Duh.
Come on, Robby.
Gosh, get a clue.
Yeah.
I could have told you that.
Yeah, you could have. You absolutely could have.
You know, after looking back at that video of that day, you took some real pleasure in my stupidity.
I did.
You were like, say that again? Let me tell you something.
Let me tell you something, my friend. It's sciatica.
Yes. You kind of perked up in the seat. I was like, he really enjoyed that, didn't he?
I love how this has now gone full circle. Well, now people believe that I can't say the word sciatica.
See, you try to be sarcastic. Someone's going to take it wrong and think you're being serious. This has happened to me a time or two in life.
It will probably happen a time or two more as we move forward here. So
true.
Look, we hope that we don't have to talk about sciatica all that much when it comes to Caleb Farley and the Titans. It'd be great. Sure, he would love that too.
And there is a sciatica shirt. Is that right?
Oh, there's a sciatica shirt. I'll probably wear it tomorrow.
You have it?
Oh, I've got it.
Well, why don't I get one?
We can
make it happen.
Yeah, I created the magic.
You did
saying sciatica.
You did.
It was actually, Joe. I don't know if you know this, Robby. I don't know if you told him. It was the shirt that I wore to the church before we changed it into our attire for my wedding.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the last thing Porth wore as a unmarried man.
How about that?
Well, kind of.
Right.
There you go.
Technically. Or untechnically. Interesting. Okay. So you guys both have this shirt.
We do.
Did just two get created?
Yeah, there's not a third one.
Yeah, I don't think there's a third one. We could probably make this happen.
This could be going like hotcakes, like your vibe. We're vibing Robby's shirt. Who knows?
Sciatica here on the program. So with that in mind, we talked about Caleb Farley, the injury concerns moving forward. I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, I am concerned about a Julio Jones injury from the simple fact that he's 32 years old. I mean, that's really where that comes from. But you look at his career, and he's been pretty durable for the most part. He's played through some injuries, and there is, I think, that to keep in mind. And like if you've had him on fantasy football the last 3 or 4 years, you know. I mean, he has been questionable a lot on the fantasy football front.
He can be frustrating in
fantasy.
fantasy.
He can be very frustrating because you have no clue whether or not he's going to be in there. But most of the time, he's been able to play through it and still be very productive. To your point, I mean, he's 32. You don't really know when that cliff is going to come and when you're going to jump off the other side of it in terms of the downward trajectory of your career. And look, I don't expect Julio Jones to come in and be, Julio Jones in 2016. But I still think Julio Jones can come in and be very good. I'm not overly concerned that he's going to come in and it's just going to be this huge injury risk heading in here. For the most part, I feel like Julio Jones has done a pretty good job of taking care of himself throughout his career.
Yeah. Can it change? Does it change?
Sure.
Certainly. There are moments.
I mean, you can have that same discussion with Derrick Henry, though. Like, it can change at any time at that position.
Right. Now, Derrick Henry's in his still mid to moving into his late 20s. Julio's 32. Been playing a long time in this league. Been playing at a high level for a long time. Sometimes people hit a wall and it just totally changes. It kind of feels like that happened with A.J. Green, for example, and some people would want to make that comparison. And then some people it's a little bit more gradual. To me, I think it's fair and pretty safe to expect that if Julio Jones is on the field and it's not like he's coming off a back or a knee or anything broken or anything like that, then he's not going to be like 50% of what he was.
No.
Right? I mean, at some point that does happen, but I still think at 32, it's a 1 or 2 year. It's probably a 2-year go for it move. And I think you feel pretty good about him giving you quite a bit in those 2 years. The Randy Moss comparison is another one, interesting. That comes up a lot this week. Teresa brought it up earlier. But he was later, and when the Patriots got him, I think he was 30 or 31, if I'm not mistaken. Well, there's an example of something like this turning out great for you. That's obviously what they're hoping for.
Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. JD texting in, it's definitely Farley in the back issues. Number one, because if we said many times before, it's always going to be some variant of an issue. You never hear of someone that, quote, used to have a bad back. Speaking of someone with back and neck trouble, although nowhere near as serious as Farley's, it takes hardly nothing for it to flare up. Pair that with the fact that both Jackson and Butler are gone, it's a big concern of mine that if Farley goes down, we could get torched by opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I think it's fair.
Sure. And he's also a rookie, so you could get torched anyway.
Yeah.
But, or, if he's out there, but not 100%, or if it has affected, as TD said shortly after the draft, affected, his twitchiness. And that's part of why he went where he went, even with the back injury, and why he would have gone higher, having even not played for so long.
Josh on the text line saying, I'm concerned about Taylor Lewan coming back at 100%. After cutting Dennis Kelly, Lewan is going to be a key part of keeping Tannehill on his feet to be able to let it fly to Jones and Brown going deep.
See, the thing, again, that's fine. He's coming off an ACL, and it's a concern. It's a reality. But the reality of this game is just expect that there's going to be injuries. Depth is such a big thing. Go back to last year. Like, we're talking this year about Julio and AJ, and then what does that mean for Reynolds and Ferkser? Well, last year, how many games did AJ Brown, Corey Davis, and Adam Humphries all play? I think it was 2, something like that.
2 or 3, yeah.
So you expect injuries, but I look at the Lewan thing as it's kind of an underrated change that's coming from the second half of last year. It's a big deal to get him back.
Well, I mean, if we're going just based on who you're most concerned about losing in general to injury, I mean, it's Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry still to me. I mean, those are the two names that come to mind first to me especially Tannehill at that position. I mean, the drop off from Tannehill to the backup is probably as steep as any other drop off on the team by far, I would think. I mean, not knowing exactly if it's going to be Deshaun Kaiser or Logan Woodside, I guess. I mean, if you lose Tannehill, you're done.
That's easily right. That's easily number one. Now, I could make a case but some of it has to do with what is Darrington Evans and all that. But I can make a case that I'd rather go 2 games without Derrick Henry than Bud Dupree.
Yeah, 2 games,
but yeah.
Much longer than that. I don't know.
Right. But yeah, Tannehill easily number 1.
Depends which 2 games.
Yeah,
Colts game.
I mean, sometimes it just doesn't matter against the Colts.
We know Porth and his affinity with the Colts.
For all his excitement, still just.
And then he just had to bring up a Titans-Colts game and just poof all the air out of the balloon.
They play twice a year. There's no escaping it.
Yeah.
No.
You don't feel good about beating the Colts this year?
Oh, he does.
I feel great. I feel better about beating the Chiefs on October 24th than I do either of the Colts games. I just think that's instilled in me.
Those are some deep scars, man.
What's going on?
Those are some deep scars.
Think Carson Wentz is going to come in and light it up for Indy?
Well, I can tell you 2 games he'll probably light it up for.
Teresa.
Well, maybe.
It didn't sound like Teresa was all that impressed.
The
with Carson
Titans
Wentz.
keep winning in Indy, and you don't keep not noticing.
Well, it's not that I not notice. It's the home games against the Colts are the ones that sting the most.
And
I would agree.
Those have not gone well.
Yeah. But to your point, they have won the last 2 road games. He'll probably play very well in the 2 games against the Titans, the two games against the Texans, maybe even the 2 games against the Jags.
Well, I don't know, man. The Texans, they've got to figure it out. No minicamp. They look like they're going to be in good shape.
That's true. Who needs minicamp?
That's incredible. Is this like Cully just doesn't want – does he keep getting asked about Deshaun Watson
He just doesn't want to be there? Like he doesn't want to have to then answer questions about Deshaun Watson when Deshaun Watson's not at minicamp?
We got everything done? We're good.
He's got tea time somewhere.
Have you ever seen a coach be like, yeah, you know what? All right, we don't need any work.
Especially for a horrible team.
Look, man, maybe
they are old.
Maybe Tyrod Taylor's been that good in the OTAs, and they just feel like they've got things figured out as they move forward.
Maybe.
Here. That's going to be interesting. By the way, Tyrod Taylor, I'm interested to see what he does coming back this year. I mean, I assume he's going to be the starter. in Houston. Stay away from those needles with punctured lungs.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Hey, it's you could do a lot worse in the situation they're in.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not bad.
Diana Rossini reporting on Twitter, Julio Jones has already been at the facility this week and attended the meeting. The expectation is that he is 100% healthy and will be here today and next week for minicamp. So Rossini reporting Julio Jones 100% healthy as he's coming into camp.
Well, that's no surprise. That's what you'd expect. I mean, a hamstring shouldn't keep lingering into the following June.
It'd be a heck of a hamstring injury.
Yeah, but then you start getting hit. So there's another question too that I have. First preseason game in Atlanta. Do you even play him?
Look, I mean, one series maybe.
One series and just like throw like a receiver screen to Josh Reynolds.
Yeah.
Let him block one time.
Like I'm interested to see how preseason gets handled. I mean, you saw it last year. You went through an entire training camp without any preseason games. It turned out okay, I think. I'm interested to see how coaches go about handling preseason games this year.
Vrabel already is like, he's a big. These are for evaluating players we're not sure about, not for
starters.
Yeah.
So
I don't blame that at all.
No, that would be some, and we've seen it happen. That would be some awful luck, is like Derrick Henry or Julio Jones goes out and gets hurt in a preseason game. I don't think you're going to see Vrabel mess around with that too much. Just my guess.
1995 or 4, Kajana Carter, Cincinnati Bengals. Preseason game, Detroit Lions, first series.
Wasn't it Michael Vick who had a pretty big, like a broken leg in a preseason game?
Yep.
His Madden cover year?
Yeah. Madden curse. I think that's died at this point, by the way. I think Mahomes is on it and they won. So I think
there was another one too.
I mean, Lamar Jackson was on it this past year. He was fine. Like I think the Madden curse is over at this point.
Has Derrick Henry been on it? Will he be on it? No,
he's not been on it yet.
Have they announced it?
I don't know.
Wasn't there speculation?
It a late switch to Julio?
Wasn't there speculation a few months ago that Derrick Henry was going to be on the cover?
That's what I thought. It came to mind. Derrick Henry came to mind.
Maybe he'll be on it. Madden 22, it's coming out. I don't think they've announced it yet. Maybe there's a chance. We'll find out. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion on the Titans. There are two positions that still have a pretty big hole on this team. Who would we rather see John Robinson address? Is it a kicker or is it a tight end? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Going to be joined to begin the 9 o'clock hour by Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic. We'll get into some big hot topics in the world of college sports with her, including possible expansion to a 12-team playoff in the college football playoff. So that coming up to begin the 9 o'clock hour. Right now, talking Titans, taking your thoughts on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Joe, our buddy Christopher on Periscope says, talking about preseason injuries, Trent Green get injured in the preseason game. Kurt Warner comes in, leads them to a Super Bowl. There is some examples of it working out, but few and far between.
Yep, that one worked out all right.
Not bad.
That one worked out okay. Yeah, that's an amazing
really is.
Case. The whole story there. What Warner a few months earlier was like stocking
groceries
shelves at right?
Yeah.
Which grocery store was it?
I can't remember exactly what store it was, but going from stocking groceries to winning the Super Bowl.
Hey,
MVP.
Logan Woodside could come in here and light the world on fire.
Maybe so.
Just about as probable.
So there's still two positions that are of heavy concern for the Titans as they move into this season, and that is the tight end position that we've talked a lot about. Anthony Ferkser, your one. Jeff Swaim, your number two. Not very much depth behind that, so that still could be on the table for the Titans and John Robinson, but also what's going to happen at kicker? Who's going to kick field goals for this team? John Robinson was on with Darren Donick and Chase yesterday and was asked about the kicker position. Here is what Titans general manager John Robinson had to say.
Do you feel like your starting kicker is on your roster, or is that still something that you're looking at?
Yeah, we certainly hope so. I watch those guys every day. I kind of go over there and I'll whistle and cough or sing a song when they're trying to kick, trying to kind of rattle them a little bit. But at the end of the day, if it goes through those two big yellow things at the end of the field, that's the most important thing. Ever how it gets there, how many steps they take, the angle of their shoe, how they got their laces tied up on their cleat. I don't really care. When they put a foot on the ball, if it goes through those yellow posts at the end, then I'm all set.
So John Robinson, a bit of a funny answer there, talking about, yes, he hopes the kicker for the Titans is currently out there, is currently on the roster. How concerned would you be if you're a Titans fan about the kicking situation right now? And do you think that the Titans and John Robinson should look at trying to bring somebody else in, whether it's Steven Gostkowski or elsewhere, to bring somebody else in to add some competition to the field goal kicking position?
I'm still operating under the Gostkowski assumption. But
he said he hopes the kicker's already on the roster.
Sure. Maybe today everyone's going to be over there with Julio. Maybe the smart thing to do is to just go watch the kickers instead.
Maybe so.
No one else on the practice field will be watched today by the outsiders. No one else. So I'll try to keep an eye on that. Look, Blake Haubill, we figured out last week that's how you say it.
Yep.
I think that maybe he's the answer. From what I've seen of McCann, I think he's a guy you have on your roster and you have him in camp, and he competes with who you want to be your kicker. Unless something significantly changes from last camp, and again, every day they went out there and they had the little competition, and it just wasn't good enough. Has that changed? Maybe, but Haubill, maybe there's some optimism about him. He was banged up last year and didn't perform as well, but you have to take the injury into account. I still think the Gostkowski thing is very possible here during camp. But as far as what you would rather him go sign, I still think at tight end there is more space now.
There is.
Do something.
Now, we talked about after they traded for Julio, just based on Robinson's comments, it didn't sound like a tight end would be likely. But given the way that Tannehill's contract restructuring and the voidable years have worked out, maybe there is room to go at a tight end. Do you think that's any more likely today than you did on Monday when we had this discussion?
Yeah, I mean, if the way that they did it with Tannehill's contract, I think again you're not going high priced item, but
no.
Another ad for sure. Now, go to my personal text line. Dane from Nolensville, go get a Melvin Ingram with this space. We just talked about the alarming depth situation at edge. Although again, last year they just went with 3 every in their 48 every game day. But I think that you could look at that as a possibility. I guess he has expressed, along with some other players out there, like, oh, Julio's in Nashville?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds fun. But I would guess, though, if you're going to – I mean, look, you can sign Gostkowski for what, $2 million, $2.5 million?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, you can sign him and sign some veteran tight end, not anyone – You're not going to figure out a way to get Zach Ertz in here.
But at this point, wouldn't you be? I would at least feel better, even if you're bringing in a tight end that's not going to start. Just add some depth. Like right now, like if one of Ferkser or Swain gets hurt, what in the world are you doing at tight end?
And it's Briley Moore.
Yeah.
It's Forrestall. So there's 2 undrafted rookies, and then Jared Pinkney. Is Jared Pinkney around yet? I guess we'll look for him out there today.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's not great. No, I mean, I agree. And again, that's why I kind of was looking at Michael Pruitt like, man, seems like it would be good to have a guy who's been in the system that's been good for you at a low cost. But they moved on from him. So
maybe it is going to be Delaney. Maybe he comes in as your third tight end.
Well, there you go. Maybe. But I think it should be someone. So, hey, maybe Haubill is great, and they feel like they found their guy.
Maybe.
If that's the case, well, then they got a little bit more money to use toward a tight end probably. But I think Gostkowski's going to be the kicker this year.
As far as Melvin Ingram is concerned, I mean, he's 32 years old. Last year, 7 games, 0 sacks. Obviously, injuries, a part of that too. Is that a route you'd even consider going down at 32 years old with a pass rusher that seems to be pretty well past his prime at this point? Just to get another body in there?
How little is he willing to take would be my question.
Yeah.
There's my question. Because, hey, talking about someone who has some ability and would not be asked to play a ton. And certainly, again, you assume injury. 100% injury rate.
Sure.
Depth is important everywhere. But how little would he take? That would be my – what's the market for Melvin Ingram? I mean, there's other guys like that out there who are just sort of, sort of drifting out there. It's funny because there's a lot of talk in Atlanta about how they need to go get him now that they have all this cap space.
That's my thing. Like, if you're Melvin Ingram, you're not going to get that much money. You're 32 years old. You're coming off a year where you didn't have a sack. Like, the price can't be that high, I would figure.
Right. And so then it's okay, over here, maybe with this not very good team, you could make a little more. Over here, you might be part of a real contender, making a little bit less. Is that his choice? By the way, there's also Cameron Wake talk out there still, like the Dolphins,
the ageless wonder.
Dolphins go get Cam Wake.
What do you think about that, Porth?
No, absolutely not.
So down on
his
Cam
eyes
Wake, man.
Jolted up immediately.
As a media person, I say absolutely yes. Bring the guy back. Just listen to him talk about his diet was amazing.
If he wants to consult the Titans pass rushers, sure. If he's a pass rush consultant, but
he got hurt.
He's 39 years old.
Hey,
he wasn't all that good when he was actually in there. I mean, he had a sack for a safety against Cleveland and then did nothing.
I'm just saying. Delaney Walker and Cam Wake, Super Bowl.
Could be the answer right there. ESPN 94.9 is the home for Nashville Sounds baseball. Tonight, the Sounds host the Indianapolis Indians, AAA affiliate of the Pittsburgh Pirates, at First Horizon Park. Pre-game show with Jeff Him starts at 6:50, and the first pitch is at 7:05. Nashville Sounds baseball on ESPN 94.9, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans and 312 Pizza Company. When we come back, we'll dive into the world of college sports with Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic, including the idea of expanding the college football playoff to 12 teams. We'll get to that next. This is Robby and Rexrode, live from the wholesaling studios, powered by RumbleOn.com, here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Final hour of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. We got a lot to get to in the world of college athletics, and to help us do that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our good friend Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic. Nicole, how are we doing? Thanks for taking time to join us this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing well. Just trying to keep up with all the craziness.
There's a lot of craziness going on. We got a lot to get to with you today. Just want to start with the Women's College World Series. Oklahoma forcing a Game 3 against Florida State last night. I was out with my wife last night watching this game as we were eating dinner. It was crazy. And then they decide we're going to put Game 3 today in like the middle of the afternoon. Just interesting stuff going on in the NCAA with the Women's College World Series. Number one, what do you make of the matchup between Oklahoma and Florida State? And what do you make of the decision of the time the game is starting today in a pivotal Game 3, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, the matchup's been really compelling. You have an Oklahoma offense that basically owns all of the records at this point in Division I softball. And, obviously we all know the JMU story. Their back's been against the wall for a little bit coming through the elimination bracket. And so did Florida State. And this is a 10 seed. This is a team that had been inconsistent at times, didn't win the ACC, but really, really fun to watch, really good defensively, aggressive base running. Both of these coaches have won national championships before. So it's been a really fun series so far. And I understand that, they had some weather issues over the weekend. And they, once both teams needed to, again, they've played the maximum amount of games. So they basically needed an extra game to essentially play into the national championship series. And so I understand why things got pushed back a day, and I understood that meant that this game was going to be an afternoon game. My issue is with the way the tournament's been set up. The College World Series for baseball is spaced out. There's more flexibility. And here you had a tournament where FSU started a game around midnight on Saturday night and then had to play a couple hours later to get another game in. And it's just a lot of games in a short period of time. Pitchers don't need as much recovery because it's a more natural motion. But, you got to rethink these things. And if you have more flexibility, maybe you don't have to play an afternoon game when something gets adjusted this way. I'm also a little curious. I wanted to look into this later today about, could ESPN2 have done it at prime time? I mean, the numbers have been really strong for viewership. So it's just such a bummer that it's not going to be at prime time, just considering what a great event it's been and how good the last two nights in Game 1 and Game 2 have been so far.
Yeah, I know John Orand, and I may be butchering his name, but Sports Business Journal, he does he tweets the rating stuff all the time. And he had one the other day, and it was the NHL and NBA stuff, and he's like, oh, wait, I'm sorry. Here, forgot this one, and it was third. It blew away a couple of the NHL playoff games, and so no, I think a lot more people are at least noticing that and how many people are into this. Nicole, name, image, likeness. I'm going to be honest. There's a lot going on, like Julio Jones. I've got 17 things planned for that. My eyes kind of glaze over at this point when it comes to, so I'm just leaning on you. And I do anyway. You're constantly on top of this thing. We've got big stuff happening now. Where does it sit, and where do you think it's going at this point?
Well, so, we had this Senate hearing yesterday, and honestly, there's not a lot of new information that came out of it. You've got people making the same talking points back and forth. But, you're able to pick up here, a couple of the same things. Mark Emmert, NCAA president, he still thinks that the NCAA is going to pass their legislation by the end of the month so that when, a couple of these states have their state laws that take effect July 1, now everyone across the country will have some level, again, it's not going to be a level playing field, but they'll have some ability to monetize their name, image, and likeness. Maybe it's going to be a little different than the rules that Florida has or Mississippi or wherever. But, you'd have some sort of baseline if the NCAA changes their rules. Now, that's what we're kind of moving towards, and everyone's kind of expecting that as kind of a stopgap measure. But everyone knows that there's going to need to be a federal law that will supersede all the state laws so that you don't have those differences in the rules and that things are even and there's a national standard. the question on that one is just, how long is it going to take and what is it going to look like? And I think that was something we also saw in this hearing, that you had some senators involved in this who, a couple of them were saying, hey, let's just do something really narrow on NIL and pass it soon. And then you had other people like Cory Booker, for example, saying that they want this to be a larger bill. They want this to address post-eligibility health care and, possibly, should this look at concussions? Should this look at off-season workouts where there's been heat stroke deaths? What else can they get involved in? And so the question is, who's going to win out in that argument of, do you just pass something really quick right now just to get this topic done, or do you wait and do something broader? So, that's part of the reason that, this is taking some time. Also, Congress has other stuff to do, but that ultimate national standard from a federal law, we just don't know when that's going to come about. So it's definitely messy. It still would be a bit messy if the NCAA passes a rule and, some of these states have different rules themselves and those are law. So, you're going to go with whatever's less restrictive. And we'd go from there. But, yeah, I mean, we're right up against this deadline, 3 weeks away, and it's still very messy. And all these schools and coaches are sort of like, everyone's trying to prepare and educate their athletes, but they're like, we don't even know what the rules are going to be, so it's really hard to do this. So it's as messy as you think it could be, possibly.
Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And, Nicole, the idea of a 12-team college football playoff at least appears to be generating more discussion and may become, a reality at some point moving ahead here. What do you think of the idea of expanding the college football playoff to 12 teams?
Well, I mean, I think we've all felt for a couple years now that expansion was necessary and inevitable. And, a lot of the key stakeholders were starting to get to that over, the last, I would say, 12, 18, 24 months. I mean, honestly, really since December 2018, when, at that point you started to see Alabama and Clemson were dominating this thing. It was getting a little top heavy. People were really focused on who doesn't make the playoffs. The bowls were starting to deal with opt-outs. Like, you're starting to see some of those side effects that, I think have been frustrating to people. And then, 7 years in, you look at the data, you see just how few teams have landed those spots, and it makes sense that they had this, a working group looking at this issue. This was actually something that they wanted to do last year. They planned to do this wholesale evaluation, but they wanted to do it in person, and then COVID hit. So, this is delayed by a year, but, again, we just had a season, and Alabama was, one of the all-time great offenses, and, it was just sort of, okay, well, that's, what's been happening, right? So I think it makes sense to look at, it obviously makes sense to look at 8. We've all talked about that for years about, how you could structure that and what it solves. The biggest issue is the access problem, right? So it's this idea that, 4 spots, there's been Power 5 leagues that have been left out multiple times in the Pac-12. Obviously the Big 12's left out too, but the Pac-12, that's become their reputation. And then, there's no real path for a group of 5 teams. So I think when you think about 12, you're looking at the ability to have automatic qualifier spots and a group of 5 spot, but also still having at-large spots so that you could say, like, no, these are just actually like a bunch of the best teams. So SEC, in a normal year or whatever, they're going to get like 4 teams in this thing, right? They get, whatever it might be. I personally still like 8 best. I think the biggest issue with 12, which I'm very curious to see how these conversations go for this reason is, you could have a team playing 17 games. And right now the maximum is 15. 17 is a lot. This is not the NFL. These are not athletes who are getting salaries or have, kind of the structure of the season negotiated by a union. So that's a lot to ask to make that jump. And so that's, again, one of the reasons I kind of lean towards 8 because, it's not adding potentially 2 games for a lot of teams. Because if you think about it, if you're an Alabama player and you're going to go pro and you're going to make the playoff every year, you're adding a lot of wear and tear to your body if you're adding almost like an extra season based on the amount of games that have been added for the playoffs. So that's the biggest obstacle for 12 because, the access to at-large spots, all that stuff makes sense. It is just that question of adding games in this era of athlete welfare and health and safety concerns. I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation. But, the best part about all of this is, as much as we love to speculate, next week and the week after are the actual meetings where we really hope to get some clarity about the direction of the playoff and what size it could look like. And, I may not get all the details, but hopefully we're getting a framework, and then we get to move forward from there and start speculating about who got screwed. So, it's going to be a fun couple weeks.
Well, I hope Red isn't getting screwed on his food today. I hear him in the background, so.
He's just being needy. He's fine.
So, it's funny, Nicole. So we were talking about the 17-game thing earlier this week too, and I totally agree. It's like, man, that is if you got to that. Do you think there's any way, because I don't see the conference title games changing, is it possible that we could see like regular season game reduction? I would think no, because it's the entire economic, foundation of college athletics. But I guess wouldn't that at least have to be thrown into the discussion if you're actually talking about expanding this much?
I would think so. And again, I would love to be a fly on the wall with the commissioners having that conversation because, but if you think about it, to your point, having X amount of home games is incredibly important to the economies of these college towns, the whole deal, right? There's people who go to games. These teams have no chance to make the playoffs, but it's like a very important thing to them. They go every year and these tickets have been passed down, whatever. The idea of having your home games it matters quite a bit. I think other leagues would be more willing to barter with that conference championship game, but it's so important to the SEC, right? Like that is, it's almost as important as the national championship race. Like the idea of making it to Atlanta, the energy around that game, like it is a huge, huge deal. And so I can't see them being willing to trade that. Maybe you go to a way, could you say everybody plays 8 conference games, so then, you could guarantee more home games for everybody because you could, add a bye game and maybe that element of sustaining college football by giving money to, in-state schools or FCS programs, by having them come play you. You'd be able to do that with a little more flexibility, do 8 conference games for every league. I don't know, but I think this is going to be a really interesting obstacle for the 12-team model that 8 doesn't have, but 12 has a lot more access and a lot more at larges. So I understand thinking about it and liking that model, but yeah, it's just going to be tough if you don't adjust anything else about the schedule. 17, man, it just sounds like so much. We think about how much the NFL had to go through to get to add one game, right? And think about the narratives we talk about with the NFL in the preseason, like should they be even doing this? Like wear and tear, and to add that, and again, the guys who are going to go pro, so these are the Clemsons, the Alabamas, Ohio State guys, they're going to be the ones playing the extra games. Do you really want to do that? Like, I have so many questions about this. I think it's a really fascinating topic in this current era of college sports. And I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I think the answer should be getting rid of a game somewhere so that you don't get all the way up to 17. But it's really hard to take something away once it's already out there and it's bringing in money.
Yeah, and also just real quick, I mean, in this era of player safety, we keep adding football. Like it doesn't all add up. But yeah, was that your mic?
That was my mic. I accidentally punched it. I don't know what happened there. It's certainly going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Nicole, appreciate so much you taking time to join us this morning. Great stuff as always.
Absolutely. Have a good one, guys.
You
Thanks,
as well. Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. When we come back, we'll react a little bit to what Nicole had to say there. What do we think? What do you think of the idea of a 12-team playoff in college football? Let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. This Father's Day, ESPN 102.5 The Game is saluting frontline fathers. Submit written descriptions of fathers who are serving on the front lines, including in the military, hospital workers, firefighters, or police. This week of June 14th, 102.5 The Game will air those submissions via call-ins, text messages, our website, and on social media as well. Visit thegamenashville.com now for more information. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Thanks to Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic for joining us in the last segment, floating the idea out there of a 12-team college football playoff that seems to be generating a little bit more conversation with the possibility of that becoming a real thing sometime in the not-too-distant future. And that introduces a late poll question of the day that Ryan Porth has come up with at 102.5 The Game on Twitter. What's your preference for how many teams should be in the college football playoff? Do you like it how it is at 4? Would you like to see 8, 12, or other? Would you like to see 2? Does that count?
I was fine with BCS, but whatever. BCS was such a huge improvement over what it had been.
It was.
I still think the BCS was the biggest positive development in all this that you'll get.
So you think the BCS was a better improvement from what it was than the college football playoff as an improvement from what it was?
Yes, I do. Now, the BCS wasn't perfect. There were years, you had the year where Auburn's undefeated and is left out. And Oklahoma and USC play for. I mean, it's not perfect, but for the most part, most years BCS got the right 2 teams. And look, I think the playoff is, for the most part, had the right 4 teams. It's not the playoff's fault that college football has gone the way it has gone, but it has gone that way to the point where it's just the same teams every year.
Let's go to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Shane from Ashland City texting in. I think 12 is crazy. I think 4 is just as crazy. 8 is all we need. You get the solid top teams, and still some get in with weak schedules. But like baseball, SEC killed themselves this year playing all SEC games. Football is the same. An undefeated BYU team last year would have lost to, let's say, a 5-5 LSU. You get a lot of these teams, and you're in if you have 12, so you're just giving the top teams an extra game for no reason. I think 8 games is perfect.
Like, just from a playoff, I went through, like, if this next year, if you went by, like, preseason rankings, and I went through what a 12-team playoff would look like. And so that's 11 games, if my math is correct. I had 8 of the 11 have a chance to be really good. The top of the playoff, they're going to blow out the teams that had to win to get to them. And then, you still may have a blowout, like with in a given year. Who is it this year? Is it Georgia? I mean, Georgia, actually, to me, it looks like on paper like they might be the best team if JT Daniels is as advertised. But regardless, you still could certainly have a 1 below the doors off of 4. You're also not always going to have, like, Alabama as in last year's form with that offensive firepower. But most of the games were good. That's fine. I mean, if you have more games in the playoff and the 8 and the 9 have a great game, I mean, look, that's more football games that matter. I think it'd be a good product. But Nicole brought up, again, the 17-game thing that we talked about, which that's just such a number. I mean, again, that's the same number that the NFL guys are collectively, they're bargaining to play, and it's very contentious, So, and then think about what she was talking about, okay, so you get a better playoff and more games, but now you're going to have worse games that you're paying your season ticket price for? I mean, I just don't see how they're going to touch the number of regular season games / number of home games that are the foundation, really, of college sports economy.
Well, they're not. I mean, that's not going to happen.
So, and I don't think, and I know some people are like, well, conference title games. I don't think that's not going to happen either. So, I as much as I like 12, from some perspectives, I think that might be the difference right there. Is it some president saying, well, look, 16 is already ridiculous, but how could we ask someone to play 17?
At Westside Fireman on Twitter says, whatever number you like for the college football playoff, just go ahead and subtract 3, because you can go ahead and pencil Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State in if there's that many teams.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, right now you could probably pencil them in if there's 4.
Exactly.
That's been the way it's been.
Pretty much. So, and it's probably going to be them in the end. You know, some 2-team combination of them in the end for the foreseeable future. You know, again, 2 years ago, LSU won it all.
Sure.
So it's not like someone else can't sneak in there, but then it's a real small group right behind them. Georgia also among those teams. And I think Georgia, this might be the year for them. We'll see. But
yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. I mean, Kirby's got to prove it. He's got, at some point got to beat the mentor. But he has built a very strong roster there in Athens. I think that they're going to expand. I do think that 8 probably is where that'll be like the compromise number with all this 12 talk. And you know what? Maybe in the minds of some people, that was the thought all along. Push 12, so all of a sudden 8 sounds, reasonable. And with 8, to me, you have 5 Power 5 spots champions. You have a group of 5 spot. If the group of 5 team hits a certain – you can't automatically always have a group of 5 team if your best one is like 10-2. But if you have an elite group of 5 team, there's a spot for them, and then you have 2 at-larges. I mean, I think that's the most reasonable. The 12 team's more fun, but there's just so much else that goes into doing that.
Let's go to Doug on our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, who wants to weigh in. Doug, thanks for calling in to Robby and Rexrode.
Hey, morning, guys. Appreciate the discussion. Why haven't we looked at, instead of having the Big 5, the Big 4 conferences, 8 on each side, 16 teams, it's 64. Then you can play with an 8 or a 4-game playoff, still have your conference championships. 7 games on your own side. You can still play 4 any way you want to play it against the other 64, and it comes out nice and even and smooth. It's having the Big 5 that creates a problem here. You got to go to the multiple of 4.
Well, right, I hear you, but let's think, Doug, about the quick answer is, because this isn't just like college football people. We've talked about have a college football commissioner. Well, college presidents have the final say, and it's messy to get any kind of playoff and any BCS and anything because there's so many different parties with different interests. That's the reason. I mean, look at how messy expansion has been, right? So now we're just going to say, hey, let's just take these schools and divide them up and have – I mean, you're completely changing the landscape by doing that. So you're right. It would be cleaner, and it makes sense. But it sounds like also then, Doug, you're just discounting the group of 5 then. Is that right?
If you want to be honest about it, the group of 5 can actually set up their own division and do it. I coach college football, still have a lot of friends out there. In the Eastern Michigans of the world where I know people and the other ones, they're never, ever going to be in that discussion. Now, how big you make those 4 conferences, you could make them 18 teams if you wanted to, or whatever you wanted to do. But after 64, we really don't see the viability of somebody being a national championship coming out of that. And it's the realism of it. And until you get to that point, you do have these discussions. But it's always about the Big 5, and then let's try to find 3. Well, those 3 probably come from the Big 5 anyway, most years.
All right, thanks for the call, Doug. We appreciate it. I mean,
I'm going to stick Danny White on you, Doug. He's going to say, UCF, did you see us beat Auburn?
That's fine, but I think generally he's right.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I like the idea that in some years, Cincinnati, not buying it, they're pretty good. You got an elite quarterback who might be a high pick next year in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think he is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like the possibility of it.
Sure.
And it's never going to be the same as basketball. I understand that. Never. But I think a lot of why we love that tournament is because of the little guy. I don't want to leave him out.
When we come back, we'll get back into the Titans. Get your thoughts on Julio Jones. Who benefits the most on this Titans offense from Julio Jones' presence? We'll get back to that next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Talking Titans, just about an hour and a half away from Tennessee Titans practice today at OTAs. Looks like Julio Jones is going to be on the field and speaking to the media today, so going to enjoy hearing from him on that front. According to Turron Davenport, A.J. Brown could be out there as well, so maybe seeing A.J. Brown and Julio Jones on the field today. Joe Rexrode, you're not a big fan of OTAs, but I can see you. You got some energy about you today, a little bit juiced to go out there and watch the Titans and Julio Jones play today.
My awesome phone, which has a button.
It does.
Only has 41%. I don't have a charger with me. Do I have enough juice to get the amazing videos that I would certainly be able to get?
That's a good question.
I'm gonna take it all the way down to the end if I need to. Every route. Maybe I'll edit them together.
Yeah.
That's what
Glenn. Conglomeration.
Glennon's also a more mature, less technologically proficient person like me. He actually edits some stuff together. I'm like, Glennon.
Does Glennon still have the notepad and the tape recorder from 1987 out there?
See, the tape recorder thing is I can't answer that because it's been so long since
true.
we've been it's all been Zoom.
Yeah.
So. But last I saw, I think he did have that big clunky tape recorder. Oh, and the notepad, of course.
Oh, yeah. That's for sure.
So we got that dome out there. Protect that dome, Glennon.
So we were talking about this earlier in the show. We spent a lot of time this week talking about the pressure that comes with Julio Jones joining this offense, Todd Downing at offensive coordinator. There's a lot of pressure to have this offense be an elite-level offense in the NFL. Who benefits the most for Julio Jones coming in? I mean, I think there are several different ways you can go with it. Derrick Henry, I mean, you feel like he should see, fewer stacked boxes than he's seen the last few years, and that seems like it'd be great news for Derrick Henry on that front. A.J. Brown not being double-teamed, I mean, he's an option on the table as well. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill, probably a pretty big fan of having Julio Jones come in as well. As you look at this offense and what Julio Jones brings on the field and the attention that he's going to bring with other defenses as well, who do you think benefits the most from having Julio Jones in this offense?
I mean, I keep bouncing around on this because you threw out A.J. Brown earlier, and I would have a hard time arguing against that. I think immediately of Josh Reynolds and Anthony Firkser just because, and again, were defenses already going to be focused elsewhere? Yes. But now?
It's a different level.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, if I'm a D coordinator, I don't know that I mention their names, So those guys are going to have great opportunities. But, I kind of start drifting toward you really think about Derrick Henry, and a defense can focus attention on a great receiver, and they can still stack the box. And I think that there's just less absolute reliance now on Derrick Henry than there was if the Titans play this right. If they do with this skill and ability what they should do, I think you're talking now. Benefit to me is more space, and it's also more health and more opportunity to be fresh when the games matter the most. So benefit with fewer carries, fewer yards. Maybe you don't look at that as a benefit, but I do. I think that you're talking about maybe more yards per carry, fewer carries, still a highly productive season, and just a more reasonable season to ask someone to go through. Because Derrick Henry, the last 2 years, as much of a freak as he is, that's not a long-term workload for anybody.
Let's go to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ron texting in. I would say the first beneficiary is Todd Downing. The second is Henry. And the third is A.J. Of course, the rest of the team benefits as well, but Downing definitely, it's a new toy for him to play with. And we talked about that. I mean, if you're Todd Downing, coming into this role, I mean, there's going to be pressure replacing Arthur Smith anyway, and I'm with you. I would much rather take the increased pressure that now comes with Julio Jones while also having the option of Julio Jones on your offense. I think you're more likely now to be able to live up to these expectations with Julio Jones coming in of having an elite-level offense. Now, if you screw up and it's not an elite-level offense, I mean, you're 100% going to get blamed, and that comes with the territory of being an offensive coordinator in this league. But I'll take my chances with Julio Jones if I'm Todd Downing.
For sure. If you're Todd Downing, already it's tough to replace Arthur Smith. It's a great opportunity, but it's tough to replace him. He was really good. 2 years. That's why he's a head coach. And you know how good Jonnu Smith is because you coached him as the tight ends coach. And I promise you, there's different opinions on what Jonnu Smith will be. Was that contract the Patriots gave him worth it and all that? Bet you Todd Downing would, in any forum, say, yeah, man, Jonnu Smith is a special talent. So you know you lose him. You know you lose Corey Davis. Bringing in Josh Reynolds. And you know that there's going to be so much reliance on the offense, while even if the defense has a big step forward, it might take some time. So you go from kind of knowing the pressure's there, still having a lot to like, to now having this collection and the way that they should be able to balance each other out and make things so difficult for the coordinator on the other side of you every week. You've got to be thrilled by this.
I just continue to go back to A.J. Brown because I think, I kind of look at this through the prism of what this was going to look like for A.J. Brown before the Julio Jones signing. Look, I think he still would have been good. I think he would have been very productive. But I don't think there's any question about it. Like, if you're an opposing defensive coordinator, your number one priority is stopping Derrick Henry, and your number two priority goes directly to A.J. Brown. With this, you've got a lot to think about. With A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, I think it's going to be pretty difficult to double-team A.J. Brown with any sort of regularity. If you do that, you're just opening yourself up to getting gashed by either Julio or Derrick Henry, and that's a tough spot to be in as a defensive coordinator. I think this is big from A.J. Brown. Like, we know how much he wants to play with Julio, how much he respects Julio Jones, and that's a big part of this too. I think just on the field schematically, this is a big deal for A.J. Brown. I expect him to have a pretty massive year this year.
Yeah, and it's going to be so interesting, especially like with teams that have a clear number one corner. Some teams feel pretty good about two or maybe don't feel good about any, but like the teams on the schedule, and this is something to go through, like that have like the clear, like this is your guy. You're going to travel this guy. If you're a man, you're going to travel him with the other team's star, right? So where do you go with that guy, Yeah,
when they play the Rams, like who is Jalen Ramsey going with? Is he going with Julio? Is he going with A.J. Brown? Like, to me, that's a really fascinating question because I don't know the answer to that right now.
I would guess Julio.
That'd be my guess too.
Just because I think A.J.'s a little bit more physical and Julio maybe a little bit more of a vertical threat. But I don't know. So to your point on A.J. Brown, if that's the case, you just went in that matchup from Jalen Ramsey to who? I don't even know who their other corner is. Who's their other corner?
I don't know.
But you prefer seeing that guy.
Yes, I can promise.
So that's think about that choice. Most teams don't have to make that choice most weeks because they don't look at two guys like this to go with Derrick Henry.
Yeah. That's the other thing too. Like if you're making that choice and you're scared to death, and look, like the best case scenario is Julio Jones comes back and he looks like Julio from a couple years ago, and he's still top 3 wide receiver in the league. Like, what do you do at that point when you got A.J. Brown ascending? Julio Jones is still a top 5 guy at the position in this league. Then you're really up a creek if you're a defense because you got to worry about double teaming Julio at that point if he's still that guy. And then there's Derrick Henry sitting in the backfield.
Right. We keep going back to it. It's just like, man, can't wait to see teams try to defend this. By the way, that's Darius Williams. So
no disrespect to Darius Williams.
Darius Williams, Sunday Night Football in L.A. Robert Rochelle is coming in here. But, so there you go. AJ, there's one week I can tell you might be having a much better week than you were about to have.
So who do you think benefits the most from Julio Jones coming in? Let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. We'll be back with that next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Final segment of the day here on Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing the Julio Jones move. Who benefits the most from Julio Jones coming into the offense? Is it Derrick Henry? Is it A.J. Brown? Is it Todd Downing? Let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Ryan Porth, we ask you the question. As you look at this Titans offense with Julio Jones coming in and the explosiveness that we think could be on the table, who do you think benefits the most from the Julio Jones acquisition?
Honestly, I think Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry benefits the most because, I mean, if it's just A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry, that is a lot easier to stop the run. But now that you have this distraction of stopping one of the top, if not the top 1-2 combos at receiver in the league, now that's going to open up space for Derrick Henry with the run. So I think I would go with 22, honestly.
I think that's a popular answer.
Yeah, I'm coming around more and more on that. The text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ryan in Nashville. This will sound crazy, but the O-line will benefit the most because with Julio in the mix, along with A.J., Josh, and a tight end going up for a pass, defense will have to stack the backfield instead of the box. Yeah, I mean, I guess, if you're I know one thing about offensive linemen. They like playing in run-based offenses. They much prefer to fire off at someone, even if they're very good at pass protection. Like Taylor Lewan, really good pass protector. He still likes firing off and hitting someone.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say like the offensive line may not be run blocking as much this year, possibly. But, yeah, I mean, it takes heat off them, too, when you have
it does.
Threats on the outside.
I still don't buy that they're just going to go completely off a cliff and it's just, turn into this team that's slinging the ball around the yard all the time.
No.
Like, they'll pass it more, and I think they should pass it more. But I still think Derrick Henry, relative to the rest of the league, still going to be towards the top in terms of workload.
So it was 52-48, right? We went through it yesterday. 52-48 last year, run to pass. One of three teams, I think, with more run than pass, right?
Yep.
I'll guess maybe just 52-48 the other way. And that's a big change.
It is.
But it's not going to be. They're not going to be like these teams that are 65-35. Right. And by the way, Mike in Murfreesboro, you guys benefit the most by Julio signing here. You have something to talk about for months. I did think about in one of the breaks today. I'm like, what would we be talking about right now? Julio. Yeah. I'm going to get a Julio jersey too.
Yeah.
Get Brennan one and get me one.
Just hang it up. You can be next to the Jadeveon Rexrode jersey.
That's right.
That you hang up here in the studio as well. Just get you a Julio jersey.
Could be Julio Joe.
Oh, man.
I was going to say Julio Croak, but that's just Julio Joe. There we go. What if we would have had, like last year when I asked John Robinson about Cladavian Jowney? Hey, are you thinking about trading for Julio Hones? Wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked as well.
I wish I could have been there live for the Cladavion Jowney.
I was, and it was amazing.
Just say, I don't know, made up player.
Joe and I were filling in for Jared and Floyd that day.
That's right.
And when Joe dropped that, I looked at Ian like, did you just hear what I heard?
So that was some brilliance on Jared's show versus apparently he said his go-for-it move. I just texted him during the break just to get this information. Was Chandler Jones. That's the go-for-it move. The 31-year-old who tore his bicep and had one sack last year.
He said yesterday that he'd be willing to cut Saffold to sign Jones.
Oh.
Chandler Jones.
Okay. Interesting.
I mean, why you are not a GM, Jared? Why you are not a GM right now, I have no idea. It makes no sense. This is a big mystery in the sports world, and I'm sure it's going to change soon.
Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Speaking of Jared, Anduin from Columbia texting in. Good discussion statement for today's show from Stillman Company. There's two ways to beat Kansas City. Number one, have a pass rush. Number two, keep Kansas City's offense off the field, which the Titans can definitely do now. What do you think about this? I still think the pass rush part of this, I'm just not convinced it's good enough. Even if Bud Dupree comes in and is what you think he is, like to me, you need more.
Well, but I would say that if you get no rush on him, you're not going to beat him, and you gotta. I mean, we did see what great pass rush does, right? Can I read Jared's response?
Sure.
Okay, so I told Jared, torn bicep 31-year-old, brilliant. He says, as opposed to an off-injured 32-year-old who plays wide receiver, Jones had 19 sacks in 2019. He does the one thing no one else in this org can get done. I think he meant to write sack. Okay, well that was true in 2019 before he tore his bicep and was hurt all last year. I mean, if you're fine with him and not worried about him right now, but you're worried about Julio.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
I can't. I'm sorry, Jared. And by the way, we haven't talked about Jared all day.
That's
today.
true.
So,
Porth, are you laughing at Julio Rex Jones?
No, there's another good one from Keith on the text line.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What do you got? Do I need to look at this? Can you not say it out loud?
Oh, yeah, that's the one.
Okay, all right. Keith on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyUnday.com. Julio Rex Jones as the name.
Yeah.
Or Julio Road Rex Jones. I like that better.
Julio Road Rex Jones. Oh, boy.
Julio Road Rex Jones. Keith, very good at names for you. There's a lot you can do with your name. I mean, we knew this from the start of this show, that you can do a lot with your name. We find more really every day.
Yeah. And some things that we can't say on the air.
Yes. There's a lot
that
of those
I've been
too.
Called.
Yes. There are a lot of those as well. Oh, what a time. Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a text that says, Jared's new show, Jared is the GM. He did fire me from being the GM 2 weeks ago. I, in turn, fired him yesterday.
Yes, he fired you, and then he's like, I'm going for Chandler Jones, baby.
Jeez. Matt on YouTube says, Ferkser will benefit the most. Defenses will forget about him, and he's going to carve him up. That goes back to your point. Anthony Ferkser could have a big day. Will Compton agrees, too. Will Compton with the tweet yesterday, expecting big things from Anthony Ferkser this year.
Yeah, no, Ferkser, Reynolds, they might have a little bit of space from time to time.
Maybe a little less opportunity, too. But, yeah, some more space.
By the way,
take advantage of your opportunities.
I just got an email from ESPN Radio saying that Keyshawn Johnson ranked Julio and AJ as the 7th best 1-2 combo at receiver in the NFL right now.
7th?
7th. Do you want to know the 6 in front of him?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Because I'm with like Evans Godwin. You know, I mean, I can see that one.
All right, so number 1, he has DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
Okay.
Number 2, DeAndre Hopkins and A.J. Green.
Holy God. Okay.
Maybe like 3 years ago.
Maybe like 7 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
What is he talking about?
Number 3, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen.
Okay.
Number 4, Evans and Godwin in Tampa.
Man, talk about underrating those guys, but okay, keep going.
Get ready for these next two.
Yeah.
Number 5, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Come on.
Okay.
Bring it to me.
Number 6 is Keenan Allen and Mike Williams.
Yeah, come on. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams.
Okay, so I mean, I'd love to hear the rationale. He obviously it's probably that he thinks Julio's done.
Well, they sent audio with it, and it's him praising Julio and AJ.
At number 7. Okay.
So I would love to hear the audio for like Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. Does he think CeeDee Lamb is going to be like amazing next year?
I feel like Jared and Keyshawn as a GM, assistant GM combo might just overtake.
Let me tell you this: if that's
league.
what it ends up being, and it's like the 7th best receiving combo in the league, probably not a good deal for the Titans. like, what are you doing at that point?
Yeah. Huh. So maybe he thinks A.J. Brown stinks. I'm trying to. But certainly there's some overrating.
Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, huh? How about that?
Mm-hmm.
That's bizarre.
I mean, they're good.
Yeah, they're fine.
And then he has Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry at 8 after Julio and AJ.
Yeah, that's the thing. So the two that came to mind that to me compete with these two would be Beckham Landry if Beckham is back, and then Godwin Evans. And what am I missing?
Metcalf and Lockett is pretty darn good.
It's very good. They are, and when it comes to deep threats, I mean, no doubt. I mean, and that's a rising, that's good, but I still would put it below those three.
Hopkins and Green at number 2.
A.J. Green? What are we talking about?
That is more blasphemy than Julio and A.J. at 7.
You're right. That's the dumbest part of it all. I mean, A.J. Green is what people hope Julio Jones isn't here, right? But he's way on the downside now. And he's had so many injuries.
A.J. Green has not been over 1,000 yards since 2017, and he barely got over it then. A.J. Green's not really been an elite-level player in this league since 2015.
I mean, he was like their 4th best receiver last year.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like, Hopkins is great, so he can be in a great duo just because of his presence?
Sure.
But no.
A.J. Green.
Like, Hopkins and Christian Kirk is a better 1-2 combo than Hopkins and A.J. Green.
Jeez.
Yeah, right?
Ugh, boy.
Can we get mad at anybody else? We got about 10 seconds.
That's about it today.
All right.
We'll have to get mad tomorrow.
Jared
We're
and
back
Keyshawn.
tomorrow at 6 a.m. Darren Donica Chase is coming up next. You are listening to ESPN 102.5 The Game.